for the February edition of Ask the Mayor.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is attending a NATO meeting in Brussels. The leaders are talking about Russia's war in Ukraine. Hegseth says President Trump wants to end the war, but he also says that it is not possible to regain all the territory Ukraine lost to Russia when the Kremlin first invaded more than a decade ago.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
Hegseth says that there must be a, quote, realistic assessment of the battlefield. The Trump administration has fired another inspector general. This one is at the embattled U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. That inspector general's office had just put out a scathing report on the administration's freeze on U.S. foreign aid, as NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports.
USAID Inspector General Paul Martin received a brief note from the White House giving no explanation as to why he was being fired. The move came a day after the Inspector General issued a report warning of the consequences of Trump's aid freeze and the administration's efforts to dismantle USAID. It says these moves are making it more difficult to track the humanitarian assistance that is supposed to continue to flow, to make sure there's no fraud and abuse, and to make sure it doesn't benefit terrorists in the Middle East. The USAID Inspector General's office has employees both in Washington and at embassies abroad with large USAID missions. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
Separately, 8 former inspectors general at federal agencies are suing the Trump administration. They were, among many others, fired suddenly late last month. The 8 former IGs allege President Trump broke the federal law by failing to inform Congress ahead of time and for failing to give clear reasons for their dismissals. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened to resume hostilities in Gaza unless Hamas releases hostages as scheduled this weekend. Hamas said earlier that it would delay the hostages' release and accused Israel of violating the ceasefire. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports.
Netanyahu met with his security cabinet for many hours, a meeting that was moved up after Hamas announced the delay. In a speech afterward, Netanyahu demanded that Hamas return the hostages as planned, or the ceasefire will end and the Israeli military will resume intense combat, he said. Earlier, President Trump had demanded that all the hostages be released by Saturday, a proposal very different from the current agreement, or, quote, all hell is going to break out. A senior official with knowledge of the matter not authorized to speak publicly later clarified to NPR that Israel expects 3 hostages released Saturday, as previously scheduled. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
It's NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu says her administration will seek state approval and funding to help build a new or heavily renovated facility for the Madison Park Technical Vocational High School campus in Roxbury. The Dorchester Reporter reports that in the letter sent to city councilors on Monday, the mayor asked for approval to begin the application process with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and there's a deadline of April of this year. Program note, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is at the Boston Public Library right now, and she's not alone. She's got baby Mira with her. She's on next with BPR. The restructuring at Mass General Brigham has led to layoffs at Nantucket Cottage Hospital. Several high-level employees were let go on Monday at the Island Hospital, which is part of Mass General Brigham's statewide network. Mass General Brigham announced that it would cut staff as a way to deal with a projected $250 million budget shortfall. The Enquirer and Mirror reports that the Chief Nursing Officer and Vice President of Patient Care, Amy Crew-Lyons, and Cynthia Winston, Executive Director of Community Medicine there, were part of the workforce reduction. Nantucket Cottage Hospital's Public Information Officer, Jeff Coakley, was also laid off. And in a statement, Mass General Brigham says what it calls a strategic reorganization will include the elimination and consolidation of non-clinical and non-patient-facing management and administrative positions. And the hospital is the second largest employer on Nantucket behind the town, with approximately 300 employees. Time now for Ask the Mayor on BPR with Jim and Marjorie at the Boston Public Library. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention we're going to be back here on Friday, Valentine's Day, with Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers, the duo behind Myers and Chang and the Great Flower Bakery, and they often bring us some great Valentine's Day cookies. On February 26th, we're going to...
Which are usually ones that are not fit for
that's right.
a family audience,
R-rated.
I should
They're
say
R-rated.
they are.
And on February 26th, we're going to be joined by Diana DeZoglio, and she's going to take our questions and yours for an edition of, I think this is the first edition of Ask the Auditor.
That's correct.
And one more programming note, Wednesday, March 5th, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, is going to join us. Hello, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Good, thanks.
We're now joined by a baby and her mother. The mother happens to be the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. She's here for the hour, taking our questions and yours for February's Ask the Mayor. If you have a question for the mayor, give us a buzz, 877-301-8970. Or if you go see Nicole, our colleague right over there, you can tell her what you'd like to talk to the mayor about, and she will make that happen. Mayor Wu, it's a pleasure to have both of you here. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you. It's great to be
Well,
back.
congratulations. What a little beauty you got there
you.
sitting on your lap. How is the baby?
She's great. She is currently having her, third or fourth breakfast of the day, and then I will do the handoff. But she's been a delight. It's been a very happy New Year so far for our family.
That's good. And you've fully recovered. Everything was great. She was great. You're great.
I mean, there's always a period. I think until they're about 12 weeks old, at least in my past experience, the nighttime is always iffy.
Yes.
Lots of getting up at random times, lots of diapers, but she's settling into a routine, and her big brothers are very helpful in the way that they're trying very hard to be, and we're doing great.
By the way, one of the two of us has given birth to 3 children, too, by the way. So one of us
It wasn't you, Jim.
understands
That's
it wasn't
right.
me.
That's right.
Mayor Wu, I just heard a couple of minutes before you came here, you had an announcement to make about a bus lane issue. Is that correct?
Yes. We have shared after significant feedback on Boylston Street from residents, from small businesses, that the bus lane part of the project is going to be removed. This comes after a long process, and I think in general we've been having a pretty intense conversation about streets and roadways, and it's important to share a little bit of the history of this. That Boston has been on a journey to think about multimodal streets for the last 15 years or so. Starting from Mayor Menino's 2013 bike plan, Boylston Street was highlighted as a major corridor that needed a facelift and needed to be accessible for more people to move down this really critical link. And then when the city did some more planning in 2017 and made a citywide Go Boston 2030 plan, Boylston Street again highlighted as needing more infrastructure. As the Orange Line shutdown happened and a bus lane had to be created so that the shuttle buses could run down the street while the Orange Line was being fixed underground, the T noted that it was actually helping the buses to have a dedicated bus lane. But in the months since that has been made permanent and finalized, we really have seen the allocation of space just for a bus lane hasn't been justified between the loading that's needed for businesses, between seniors and others trying to get into the library and other spaces. We have heard from community members that this needs to be changed. So we are going to keep the bike lane as outlined in the long-term plans, and then move towards reallocating some of the space for the needs that are specific to this street. I think in general, we're thinking about this moment in the city's development and evolution of our roadways. Again, 2013 was a period where 65 miles of bike lanes were constructed in just 3 years as the start to really thinking through our roads. And then since then, we have done a lot of quick build, meaning plastic posts and temporary paint markings just to be able to get to Vision Zero, or saving as many lives from crashes as possible, as quickly as possible. But now that we're in this moment where our administration has taken on completing or finishing many of the last links, the kind of hardest, biggest trade-off links, it's time to review all that's been done over the last 15 years and move into a more permanent, beautiful way of building our streets and not being stuck in a kind of temporary fix for safety. It's time to really ensure that we're thinking about the permanent long-term solution. So we're actually going through and doing that in a lot of different locations on Mass Ave and throughout the neighborhoods as well.
Would this have happened had there not been a challenger?
Yes, this has been in place for some time, and so we've had meetings even throughout 2024 with community members, and the lane was installed or finalized in July of 24, and so it's been multiple seasons now where we've seen how it's functioned.
You know, Mayor,
I must
I'm
admit,
sorry.
it's going to be very difficult for me to
I was just going to say
this hour,
this.
so I'm looking at your gorgeous little baby girl who seems to be staring right at me. I'm sure she's not, but she seems to be.
I'm sure she
she's
is.
so cute. She's got her little Boston Public Radio T-shirt.
By the way,
on.
if you are not watching us streaming today, and this is Connor, who is the father of this beautiful new child who is taking over. Connor,
my
thank you very much. It's good to see you. You know, Mayor Wu, we've talked a lot, I'm sure you've thought a lot about the tsunami of executive orders that have come out of the White House. Lots of institutions have made changes as a result. I'm sure people read in the Globe. GBH is among them, making some changes to DEI things. And once Marjorie and I are not 100% clear about what the changes are, as soon as we have an opportunity to talk to our bosses, we'll share that with the public. But are you having to change some things that the city is doing in response to what Donald Trump is doing?
The things that we are changing are shoring up and protecting against risks that are coming from the federal government. We have had to look at all the funding that we've been allocated and really ensure that the legal language is there in contracts to protect them and to work with the Attorney General Campbell and other colleagues to push back in places where those executive orders have already crossed the line. We are not changing how we do business in Boston. We're not changing our focus on including every person in the work that we do. And that is the function of what government is supposed to be doing. If you think about the Boston Public Health Commission, their mission is to ensure that all Bostonians live long and healthy lives. And it's very clear that when there are disparities by race, by economic situation, by neighborhood, we have to not ignore them or paint over them or pretend we're using different words, but really look at that head on and put the resources where they need to go to address that.
Well, let me ask you about two specific things, though. We've been reading, and we've spoken to you about the reparations task force in the city. That's one question. The second thing is both the Globe and GBH, our colleagues, have done some wonderful reporting about the frighteningly pitiful numbers of contracts, city, state, including my home city of Cambridge, that have been going out to minority and women contractors. You've increased that number to minority businesses dramatically, more than doubled, I think, from 2023 to 2024. Is either the reparations task force or this minority contracting focus at risk because of what the president's doing on race and gender?
Not at all. No, we are continuing, and in fact, what Boston represents and what we are such clear proof of is that when you look at the reality of our communities, when you look at disparities that exist between outcomes on health and longevity or household income or home ownership, it's very clear that historically policies have led us to this point, and that policies are needed to ensure that we're all benefiting from the full participation of our entire community, economically and otherwise. And so our city is known as the safest city in the country. We have been seeing job growth and a desire to be part of Boston, and major companies moving here like Lego and others because of what Boston represents. And it's because of the policies that really focus on closing gaps and including everyone.
We're talking to Mayor Wu. We'll get to your calls and texts in a minute, 877-301-8970.
You know, Jim was asking about the impact of some of these executive orders, though, and in some cases, the president has said he's going to withhold federal funds from organizations, colleges, cities, states that don't follow his directives. So what does that mean for Boston in terms of money?
It's one thing, I think what we've learned in the last several weeks since the inauguration is that it's one thing to issue a statement that seems to fulfill a campaign promise or something that was within Project 2025. And it's another thing to have that actually have legal force to be able to be implemented. Many of the most intense executive orders have already been stopped in the courts, and every day is a new set of actions that are taken in the legal and judicial system to be able to sort out what is real and what is not real. So far, we have not had direct impacts on the types of funding that we're most worried about because of the legal processes that are still playing out. Now, as those get resolved, we're monitoring very closely to see if anything needs to be adjusted to the realities of what's happening. But now's a time when Boston is going to lean on our resources here locally, the authority that we have within the city level and within city government to do everything we can to continue pushing forward on our climate resilience goals, on housing affordability, on investing in public education, even at a time when the federal government is looking to threaten all of those.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about, or they've talked about in Washington, is the closing of the Department of Education, or the shrinking of that, and how much of school funding around the country is impacted. So is that among the funds that you're most concerned about?
We're eyeing everything. I mean, so far there have already been orders on transportation funding. There have been orders on research and medical funding that affects the entire region, and Boston most of all, across any city in the country. And there's been discussion around public health dollars as well, and all education, everything has been in there. So we are looking to do what we can do and to identify the places where we can continue expanding our work through partnerships. We've had just a very, very strong relationship with state government and the Healy administration and our partners on how we will stand as a united front. We've had a very strong partnership with local philanthropic and private sector institutions who also understand their obligation and their opportunity to stand in the gap now.
We're talking to Mayor Wu, 877-301-8970. Now here's your opportunity.
Aaron in Dorchester, you're on with Mayor Wu.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. I love your show.
Thanks.
I listen obsessively.
Thanks.
Mayor Wu, thanks for coming on the show. I'm a Boston public school teacher, and I'll be blunt. Teachers around the city are disillusioned and, frankly, furious at you for allowing contract negotiations to go on for a full year now. We started last February. I just want to ask why. Why have you allowed the bargaining to drag on for so long? No flexibility on wages, very little openness to any of our many constructive proposals. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
So, Aaron, first of all, thank you for what you do every day for our students and being in one of the most important jobs in the city. I have had an eye into what's been happening in the contract negotiations, and I'll just say this. One, I think the city, and certainly our administration and the BTU are on the same page when it comes to what we want for our students, and that is for every possible resource to be there for the supports and infrastructure for students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and many of the places that historically the city has not provided enough infrastructure and funding. That needs to be resolved. And we recognize that educators bear so much of the responsibility when it comes to paraprofessionals or others whose income gaps are really making it difficult for people to both take care of their students and take care of their own families and put food on the table. I will say that bargaining is a two-way street, and the city has remained at the table, proposal after proposal, really trying to sort through some of these issues. We, as you know, are bound by state law in the amount of revenue that the city takes in every year. Because we can't come up with our own revenue sources, because when we try to do so, we get shut down at the legislature, because since for 4 decades, we have been restricted by Prop 2.5, which puts the property tax restriction capped at 2.5% growth every year, which is far less than inflation year after year. there is a limit to what we can do and still be able to afford everything that the city has to take care of. And so we're working within those difficult constraints. I think we see that across many districts, even in the Commonwealth and certainly around the country. But I am hopeful and eager to get this done. I know my team is setting aside daily 8-hour blocks to be at the bargaining table, and we continue in good faith to have collaborative, productive discussions with union leadership around how we can get this done. I know this is weighed heavily on our educators, and it's a very, very important component of how we deliver services, but we are within the realities of how budgeting has to happen in order for us to be a fiscally strong city in maintaining and sustaining what we can do.
Aaron, thanks for your call. Good luck to you and your colleagues. We're talking to Mayor Wu for the hour at 877-301-8970.
So, Mayor, I understand you are going to accept the invitation to go to Washington and talk to Congress about immigration. It would seem that it could be fraught. I mean, they could be screaming at you for 45 minutes or
6 hours, I hear.
Or 6 hours, that's
6
right.
hours.
That's right. I thought you should have brought the baby with you, myself.
Well, we are booked for March 5th. The mayors of Denver, Chicago, and New York will also be going. And it really was not presented as an optional choice for us to go or not go. And I gladly am taking the opportunity to go down to D.C. and defend our city, defend our policies and values that have led us to become the safest city in the country. The framing of this set of questions and the congressional invitation has been around immigration and how policies that are focused on building trust within our immigrant communities and within the community as a whole are, it's been framed as that is somehow creating opportunity for dangerous and violent behavior to thrive in our cities. In fact, we represent the opposite. If you look at the facts, gun violence has been at the lowest levels every single year during our administration, and Boston has had policies on the books that allow us to ensure that everyone is part of keeping our community safe, knowing that you can reach out to call 911 when you need help, knowing that you can report information that you have safely, and knowing you can bring your child to school, be part of our community, where immigration status is neither a barrier to receiving services, nor a shield to behavior that violence or other harm, where you'll be held accountable regardless of immigration status as well. I think we are the clear example and proof on both counts that this is a community that represents, in fact, what many other cities are asking us what they should do on public safety.
Was there a point at any time that you were considering not complying with their invitation?
Well, in fact, the original invitation was issued just two or so weeks ago, and it was for yesterday.
I know that, yeah.
So, again, you see the baby needs to eat just about every 30 to 45 minutes.
Other
and so
than the kids
that
scheduling, was there any doubt you'd show up?
We've had some back and forth about, because there are multiple pieces to the request. One was around information and a very, very wide-ranging ask for any documents related to a whole broad subject that we've now been working to understand what they're actually looking for. In terms of the request to go down, a lot of it was logistical and coordinating with other cities and making sure that in terms of my physical health and recovery that I could be in line with what my doctor was recommending.
Are the other three mayors showing up on the same day?
That is my understanding,
There.
yes.
Amy in Boston, you're on with the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hi. Amy.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Great. So
we can.
I have a question for Mayor Wu.
Great.
I've become concerned about some of the recent actions by the Boston Public Library. They've made me worried about the disability protections for city employees. One of my good friends works for the library, and she's been very successful in surviving and thriving with a terminal cancer. That is really a challenge. However, the library has denied allocations for sick bank hours. She's given 35 hours per year and is not able to use any vacation time to attend appointments or any necessary treatments. This makes me more concerned, though, for all the rest of the employees of the city, because they don't have access to Massachusetts paid family medical leave. They aren't given access to any buy-ins for short-term or long-term disability that they can even pay for themselves. And so once they're out of sick time, they are vulnerable to termination proceedings for not attending work. So I'm very, very concerned about kind of learning how vulnerable city employees are, not just my friend, but every single person who works for the city has none of the protections that the rest of the state has.
What's your question, Amy, if I may? What's the question?
So my question is this actually really the case? Are people this vulnerable, or is this a specific action that your office is looking into? How do ill employees of the city receive protection?
We understand that. Thanks for your question, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, and thank you for advocating and speaking up. I am familiar with this particular beloved employee and the situation here. We treat privacy very seriously in terms of personnel situations, and so I can't get into the specific details here, but I will say that we are aware and working on understanding how best to support in this case. As with, in some ways, the previous question as well, there are specific parameters that the city has to work within in terms of what the collective bargaining agreements say and what the general policies are that we have to follow, and we're always focused on the health and well-being of employees as the foundation for being able to talk about anything that the city does. It really is because of the amazing people who work for our city, and our office and our team has been focused on making sure that we could create a whole support system to really prioritize professional development and personnel supports and a whole manner of issues that I think previously were much more codified in formalities. And so we want to keep this going, and appreciate you reaching out on this specific case, although we can't get into too much of it here.
Yeah, Mayor, Michael Flaherty, former city councilor and former mayoral candidate, not against you, but against Tom Menino, was ousted as, I guess he was the general counsel, Boston Water and Sewer Commission. The Globe story says, while it's not publicly known what specifically prompted the outside investigation of Flaherty, his management of the commission's legal department had come under fire. He only worked there a year at $225,000, and he got a $253,000 payout. Did you have any involvement in that? And whether you did or not, are you okay with that?
I was not involved in this situation. Water and Sewer is a separate entity from the city, and again, with personnel situations, things happen and situations change, and there are a whole set of legal and contractual parameters that end up shaping the outcomes of what happens in individual cases.
But specifically, I understand you can't discuss personnel if it's yours, but as you just said, there's a line between you and this commission. Are you comfortable with Michael Flaherty getting a whole year's severance after there was apparently some problem with his performance, and he's getting more than a year's pay after only working there a year?
As I understand, this was the agreement that was reached and comes from consideration of a whole set of factors. So I'm not familiar with all the details here, but Water and Sewer is its own entity, and they function and make their own personnel decisions.
Okay.
877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. We're talking with Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. She's here at the top of the hour. Terry from Jamaica Plain, you're on with the mayor.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Margie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to start with a big thank you to Mayor Wu for her support for the winter walk for the homeless.
Oh,
it was a great time over the weekend.
It was a great time. The walk supports 24 different organizations looking at different aspects of homelessness. But I want to get to my question. And my question is that we're looking to the Democratic mayors to show the rest of the country that there is a way of dealing with our problems which shows respect for the people who are caught up in the problem. So my question is, Madam Mayor, do you have a vision for homelessness and housing that all of us who want to help in Boston can plug into?
Yes, absolutely. I am blessed every day to work alongside I would say, the best team on housing in the country, led by our chief of housing, Sheila Dillon, who is nationally known as an expert for her depth of experience and creativity when it comes to putting together all the pieces in a very complicated system to be able to fund and produce affordable housing. Under her watch and under our collaboration, the city in the last 3 years has produced more affordable housing than in the last 25 years. And that's been through a combination of using our funding and deploying it, particularly to fund deed-restricted housing that is guaranteed to be permanently affordable, as well as launching new and innovative programs that often rely on community partnerships to create even more impact. And so, for example, we have partnered with all of the major hospitals and healthcare institutions who've agreed to direct their community dollars into a new fund that the Boston Foundation and the city have been partnering on that is taking affordable housing, market rate affordable housing, what's called naturally occurring affordable housing, off the market and keeping it permanently affordable for the tenants who live in it. We've also been using city-owned land, whether it is a vacant parcel in the neighborhoods or a city building that needs to be redeveloped, and adding housing on top of that with a clear focus on supporting the development opportunity for local companies and local, particularly Black and Brown owned businesses, Boston-based businesses, to get their foot in the door and to have the technical support to create those homes and therefore create jobs along the way as well. We are focused on housing. There's a set of issues that we are still pushing forward on. We've put some funding in a first ever revolving fund called our Boston Accelerator Fund that will then kickstart some of the units that have already been approved but are having trouble getting across the financing finish line. So there's lots of ways where we can plug you in, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing, and would love to, if you reach out or if you stay on the line, we can get your contact information. I'd love to plug you into what our team is doing.
Terry, let's stick around, and our producer will take your contact information for the mayor.
You know, Mayor Wu, Josh Kraft has announced he's going to challenge you for the mayor, and that's one of the things he's criticized you about, is saying that there's stuff that's permitted, but not enough housing has been started in Boston, gotten off the ground.
Yeah, we have been focused on this 20, depending on how you count it, 26, almost 30,000 units of housing that have already been approved and gone through the community process, but are not yet in construction. And if you look at the last 3-year period that we're in, the number of what's called housing starts, new housing that's actually begun to be built, is actually higher than any time in the last 25 or so years, with the exception of periods when interest rates were at almost zero. This was in some ways an anomaly that the national economic markets over, for a 7-8 year period in the last decade or so had interest rates where it was essentially free money for developers to be able to build. Now that rates are higher and don't look like they will potentially ever go back to that near zero level, we have to be really intentional about how we're using city resources and city authority to get housing moving again. That's why we're putting funding, $110 million in our accelerator fund to getting projects going, and holding firm on affordability requirements. I've seen today that there's some buzz, although I haven't read all the details, but some of the coverage that there's now a proposal coming from out of the mayor's race, where the proposal is that again, this sort of fake rent control would be implemented, and then in fact, affordability would be dismantled, where the requirements that we have put for on-site affordability required for every new housing development to include a certain percentage of affordable units, that would be reduced back down to the levels it was many years ago.
From 20% to 13%, but at the same time, Kraft says he would raise eligibility, income eligibility.
Right, and in fact, both
Go.
parts are what we hear is the exact opposite of what community members need. And you can't make Boston more affordable by reducing affordability requirements. And so I've heard with alarm some of what the housing activists have already reached out this morning, saying we need to ensure that Boston continues to grow as a city for everyone. This would take us backwards. And in fact, the assertion that lowering these requirements would unlock the 26,000 units is a total misunderstanding of the reality of the city's work. In fact, those 26,000 units were permitted under the old rules. So going back to the old rules wouldn't change anything in this case. And in fact, we have to be strong about ensuring that housing and housing affordability are at the front of the agenda, and that we're not going to let those who might have been recruited by the real estate and wealthy development community to come in and try to undo some of the requirements that we need in place for when the economy and when our housing market comes back and ensures that we will be building what Bostonians need and not just luxury housing.
One more housing question. Before I do, though, we've gotten a lot of heat from a bunch of listeners about not having Josh Kraft, who announced a few weeks ago on the show. We have tried repeatedly. Marjorie and I have been on the air 25 years. I don't think I can name one new candidate who has not been on our show a nanosecond after announcing, but we've tried, and so far we failed, and our invitation is open. Anytime his schedule is free, we're happy to do it. I have two more questions about, one about housing and one about the Kraft candidacy. You called it fake rent control, the proposal that Josh Kraft put together. What does that mean? Why do you call it that?
What I mean is that it's a distraction, because this is very misleading for Boston residents. We all know, and I know, Jim, you have been personally involved in many others in the city, in understanding the history of what housing policy has been, and the fact that rent control means a certain government involvement to ensure that there are protections in place that apply across the board. And in fact, what our administration had proposed and passed through the city council and was stuck at the State House was a form of rent stabilization that was not the old version that Boston had, but would ensure that the worst actors, the predatory increases of more than 10% a year in rents, that those landlords and property owners who were pushing people out with 30%, 40%, 100% rent increases, that there would be guardrails to protect against that. What we are seeing proposed now is, in fact, a good landlord tax credit, something that state law has made possible and something that has been working its way through the Boston City Council already. But I want to be clear that this is not a solution to the problems that we are trying to solve, which is asking those who are already being good landlords, or those who might be on the edge of wanting to keep rents low, to do so in exchange for tax breaks, which again would require additional resources from somewhere else from the city, while not doing anything to protect against the worst rent increases. Those who are increasing, if you are a property owner who could either choose to increase rents by 100%, clear out the whole building, and then jack up rents, or you can get a small tax break for keeping rents within 5%. If you're already headed down that pathway, this program, a voluntary program, is not going to capture or protect against the worst offenders.
But even
what it will do is take those who are already in the space of wanting to be good landlords and reward them, right, and give them tax dollars and a tax break. But it is a use of resources without offering the types of protections that we really need. And in fact, what we saw today was that this has been a distraction, because the real policy underneath all of this is to keep everyone talking about some version of whether this is rent control or not rent control and whether it actually does anything, while the real proposal is to dismantle affordability requirements and, in fact, take us back to a time when it was anything goes for developers making money at the expense of affordability.
Brief question, hopefully for a brief answer, though. As long as the legislature, which is landlord-dominated, continues to say no to home rule petitions from you, for example, about rent stabilization, is the Kraft proposal better than nothing, or you'd reject it even if the legislature continues?
So in fact, we are, again, Councilor Gabriela Coletta Zapata has been sponsoring this provision, and it's had hearings, it's working its way through the council. It's already in the pipeline for the city to do something on this front. We have to be clear about what the parameters are to participate, what the level of tax break is that makes sense for the city, and we will get into all of that.
One last thing, where the details I have to say I'm not great on, so my apologies in advance. There is a soccer stadium being built in Everett. It's the Crafts soccer stadium. I didn't watch Josh Kraft's interview yet with John Keller. I'm told he said he'll recuse himself from any Kraft family business with the city. I don't understand it vis-a-vis this. My understanding is the legislature said that the Crafts had to negotiate, not just with Everett, but with the city of Boston about whatever you call them, community benefits, that sort of thing. And what I read in the Globe is that so far their offer was $750,000 to something in Charlestown, and the city's response is, well, the model should be, and correct me if I'm wrong, the $68 million that Encore gave to Boston when the casino was built.
Right next door.
How does that, I mean, what's the state of things, and how does that work exactly when the family business of the Crafts is negotiating with the person that one of the sons in the Kraft family is trying to defeat? I don't know if I articulated that well, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, that's a gigantic conflict of interest that I think is on him to sort out, and honestly to be more forthright on. You can't recuse yourself from being mayor, and this is a mega development project that is going to have tremendous impacts on the city of Boston, not just our residents in Charlestown who will bear the brunt of decisions made about transportation access. And in fact, this proposal so far, as I understand it, has been pitched as a no parking development. So the tens of thousands of fans who attend games are going to make their way from Sullivan Square in Charlestown over to Everett or potentially through Assembly Row, et cetera. But there's been no real details offered. I still have not heard from the Crafts on the proposal at all. There's been some conversation between the Revs and members of our team. They've reached out to Kairos Shen, who is leading our internal organizational efforts on this. And I believe there will be a staff level meeting happening this week as well. I have reached out to Mayor DiMaria of Everett, and so we're scheduled for going on a walk together later this week where we'll do, I want to be able to get my eyes on the site and actually see where different things are intended to go, because we have not heard anything from the project proponents themselves.
But the Revs, I mean, in all fairness, though, the Revs are speaking on behalf of the Kraft. So are they not? I mean, I don't know. Are they not? I mean, that.
In most cases, I will just say, it has been now multiple years where this proposal has been working its way through conversations in different, mostly closed-door spaces. I have personally asked about directly to Mr. Kraft and others about how Boston could support bringing soccer and the Revs into our city or closer to our city, because I think it's a fantastic opportunity. That conversation was never continued or acknowledged.
Mr. Kraft is Robert Kraft.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Dad.
We got it. Okay.
And there was silence until the legislature basically forced them to come to the table with the city of Boston, and now there's been some outreach. So I will look forward to seeing the site and working through getting the city of Boston a fair deal, because this is a major, major project, and you cannot lowball the residents of Boston because of profits when we will be the ones bearing much of the transportation impact. And I want to, again, just reiterate, it's also a fantastic opportunity. We know the difference that having professional sports franchises within the city can make. This is within the region. There are many, many people who are excited about this, but it has to work for transportation access, for public safety, and for fairness in terms of the impact on Boston.
David from Boston, you were on with the mayor.
Hi, David.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Jim and Marjorie, I love you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Love you, and I listen to your show all the time.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to bring to your attention of what's going on in Mattapan, Dorchester, and Hyde Park. We are under attack when it comes from large developers trying to build in our communities and the city relaxing zoning laws so that they can do it. And what's happening is they're not just, refurbing or refurbishing old houses or lots. They're tearing down microforests and trees. I'm actually on the Tree Alliance Committee in Boston, and they're trying to address it, but the tearing down of all of these mature trees right? They're saying that we have to pass legislation in order to stop that. And we're going through all of these issues with our environment, and especially in Black and brown communities where we have asthma and high rates of all sorts of breathing.
David, we got it. What's your
issues.
question? We hear you. What's your question for the mayor, please?
What are we doing about that? And also, the community process is broken. I think the mayor knows who I am. 7 houses on a dead-end street.
We got
building
it.
a 48-unit house.
We got it. David, thank you very much for your questions. We appreciate it. Mayor?
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, David. Thank you for all that you do, and shout out to the Tree Alliance, because this is really, I would say, not just important work, but life-saving work. As we see in other communities, the destruction of climate change, whether it's wildfires in the West or other, food systems being destroyed and impacted in other locations. In Boston, our situation is flooding and heat, both of which can be helped by more tree canopy and ensuring that we have the right green infrastructure in place. So that's been a big focus. I think, David, as you know, our administration has for the first time ever invested in an arborist team so that finally there's support and staffing on the city side to be able to maintain the 30,000 street trees that we have on the streets and in our parks and urban wilds, and then to be able to work alongside the Tree Alliance and others to think about how to do so and protect private trees on private property as well. It's a very complex situation when it's a private property owner and they have say over what to do, absent legislation and absent other rules, but we are working wherever we can to increase, we've received an $11 million grant from the previous federal administration to be able to build Boston's tree canopy. We have changed the defaults in how we install curb infrastructure and other street infrastructure so that the first ask and the first default materials are grass and trees and green to be able to absorb that water wherever possible. And we know that we certainly have to do more. Part of what we're seeing in Franklin Park is that the conversation around White Stadium is also a way to build a tree bank for the city of Boston and to be able to replenish hundreds of trees in a very core area that we need to make sure are healthy, maintained, removing the invasives, and having the right ecology so that the parks and open spaces can thrive on their own.
Thank you for the call. Mayor Wu, what's Love Your Block, please?
Love Your Block is one of the best programs all year. It's a now multi-decade tradition where community members come together and the city will facilitate basically neighborhood cleanups. It's often neighborhood associations who want to build community and get everyone involved on one single day to clean up an area, and the city will help by providing the rakes and whatever those things are that the garbage pickers. I'm doing the motion and supports. We help drive volunteers there, and this will happen across all neighborhoods in the city at times that work for them. And we're really excited to be able to bring this back.
So this is any time. It's not any particular time.
No, it's a particular day for each neighborhood that is set. So you can go to the website.
Can we stay on the
and find
good news for a second? You always bring something city related, and I don't want to hold it up because I'm afraid I'll hold it up upside down. Is this the right way?
That's the right way. Yeah.
Okay, so I can show this to the camera. Marty's got. What is this?
That is your name, transliterated in Chinese.
Oh my gosh! If I got it upside down?
Oh, that's upside down.
Upside down.
And that is not Jim's name. This one's your name.
Oh, that is really cool.
These came from our City Hall Lunar New Year celebration, which was a couple of days ago. There was an artist there who was doing calligraphy with everyone's names, and so we figured we would throw yours into the pot too.
Thank you.
That's
very
great.
much.
So happy Lunar New Year and Year of the Snake to everyone as well.
And to you too.
Okay.
Let's get Paul from West. Thank you, Mayor. Paul from West Roxbury. You're on with the mayor. Please be brief. We're running low on time. Hi.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mayor. Thank you.
Good morning.
Let me start by thanking you for inaugurating the food waste recycling program in West Roxbury. I'd like to hear your plans for expanding that to other neighborhoods, number one. Number two, how about some recycling bins in our parks and playgrounds? I can't say that I've seen any or many. Brookline and Newton have some. And generally speaking, how do we know, how is all the recycling we dutifully put in our recycling bins, glass, metal, do we know how much of it is actually being recycled instead of ending up in landfills as we so often hear? Thank you.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through all three pieces. One, thank you for participating in the neighborhood drop-off and recycling program. We now have certain sites around the city, and as you know, we have curbside food composting for the first time in the city, which has just really taken off, and there's still space for residents who want to sign up and have a cute little mini green bin that puts your food scraps in. That, in fact, is not only a way to divert scraps out of the landfill and to repurpose them for healthier uses like being turned into fertilizer, et cetera, but it is a huge help when it comes to rats as well. The number one challenge is having food interspersed through all parts of our waste disposal system, which then makes it difficult to limit and really protect against rats being able to access that food source. So that's a side benefit. When it comes to how we can expand this and whether this is actually getting to the right places, it's single stream recycling is quite hard. Anytime there's too much food waste, for example, caked onto food containers, it ends up making it not possible for them to accept it into the recycling stream. So we're taking a bit of a trade-off, either by being as inclusive as possible and making it as easy as possible for everyone just to dump all the things into one bin and then it gets sorted later, but then you really lose a chunk of it, or to be very strict and then not accept things into recycling if they don't meet certain standards or they have to be sorted very specifically. And right now we're using the first approach, but thinking through how to be better about efficiency and the environmental impact. And then your question about parks, yes, this is underway. This is something that's been in conversation for some time. So we're trying to sort this through, but that is definitely on the list for getting done, having recycling in the parks.
So I am not a big hockey fan. I kind of tell a lie. But the hockey, NHL is on break, I think, and there's this 4-country something or other. And what is the city doing to have some fun in the middle of this? Do I have this right so
yes,
far? I do.
The Four Nations event. So this is several of the places where ice hockey is huge. U.S., Canada, Finland, and Sweden.
Okay.
And so the teams are all coming together, and in the lead up to hosting those events, those games at the Garden and in Montreal next week. This weekend, we have Fan Fest on the Plaza. Oh. So everyone can come out. There's lots of festivities all weekend long. And last time we hosted this, it just was huge and welcomed a lot of visitors to the area and brought a lot of very passionate hockey fans together. So we hope everyone comes out and checks that out this weekend.
Is the head of the Players Association going to be there?
I'm not sure.
Who is he again?
I actually did. I got to spend some time with my predecessor, Marty Walsh.
Who's the head of the union for the players?
He was at the Winter Walk as well.
Oh, he was?
So,
oh, great.
yes.
Terrific. Mayor, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for coming in. And congratulations again with your beautiful little girl.
Thanks for having me.
We've been speaking with Mayor Michelle Wu, and we're very grateful that she gives us her time once a month.
By the way, can I just interrupt to say the Senate has just confirmed Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence.
Mitch McConnell voted against her, but it didn't do any good. Anyway, coming up after the new news, Harvard's Juliette Kayyem is next. She's going to talk about Russia's release of an imprisoned American teacher, Mark Fogel, and also Trump's executive orders and some cases about those executive orders that are up in New England, and some she can talk about and some she can't, and she'll tell us why. Listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
And you are listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH 89.7. It is just about 11:55, and you have heard an entire hour with the mayor on Boston Public Radio, and listener contributions are, well, that is the way we can do that. We can bring you the entire hour. It's the last day of the GBH Winter Membership Drive. I'm Sonia Lee. I'm here with Melissa Jones. We're asking you to now take a minute and make a contribution to support support Boston Public Radio on the last day. And your gift is going to help to bring these kinds of conversations coming your way in the months ahead. 15 contributions is what we need here in these 5 minutes. 15 fans. Looking for 15 fans of Boston Public Radio in the next 5 minutes. You can give online, gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
You listen to Boston Public Radio because it helps keep you informed on what's happening in our neighborhoods, in Boston, and across our state. Jim and Marjorie ask the questions you want answered by the people who make changes that affect your day-to-day life, just like the conversations that you were listening to just now. And that's why we're asking for your gift now. You make it possible with your contribution. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And, of course, we have thank you gifts, too. And one of the most popular ones is the Eton Radio. And today you can pick up the Eton Radio and our dry bag for a gift of $12.50 a month as a sustaining member. 2 gifts bundled together, special for the last day of the membership drive. Normally, you'd have to give a lot more. The Eton, of course, you know all about the Eton. Marjorie, I think, has like 10 of them by now. You can never have too many. You can get the Eton and dry bag online at gbhnews.org. $150 gift, one-time gift, or $12.50 a month, or 888-897-9424.
If you're already a sustaining member to GBH, thank you. Now's a great time to add a few more bucks to that existing membership. It's really easy to do and won't make a big difference in your bank account, but it will make a big difference in what you hear every day on GBH. Make that increase right now, $2, $3, whatever works right for you works great for us. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Want to send a thank you to Melody listening in Jamestown, Rhode Island. And we also heard from a fan in Waltham. Thank you so much. 13 contributions. Whole hour with the mayor. Now we need a little rally as we're wrapping up this membership drive. Your gift right now, join with others, is going to help to continue to bring you Boston Public Radio in the months ahead. And we know that is especially important right now. 13 people, just about 3 minutes to go. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
I'd like to add a thanks to a fan in Jaffrey, New Hampshire, who says, I think it's important to get real news without hype. This is the way. And thank you to Martha and Randolph. Love Jim and Marjorie. Don't know what I would do without them every day. Thank you, BPR and NPR. Thank you, Martha and our friend in Jaffrey. You're all working together to make great things happen on this last day of the drive. We got 13, as Sonia just said. Why don't you be one of those folks who gets us to our goal? gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And you listen to Boston Public Radio because, well, it helps keep you informed on what's happening in our neighborhoods in Boston and, of course, across the country. Jim and Marjorie ask the questions you want answered by the people who make changes that affect your day-to-day life. It's why we're asking for your contribution right now, especially on the last day of this membership drive. Your gift is essential. Listener support is the lifeblood of this station. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
And when you can give $12.50 a month right now to help us get to that goal, we've got that popular, these are the most popular gifts we have. That's why we're sharing them with you today. The GBH dry bag and the Eton emergency radio. I have at least 3 of them. They are necessary as we go into the summer and you want to know what's going on with the weather and you want to stay in touch with what's happening, and then you got the dry bag to keep it all great. That's yours as our thank you to you with your sustaining membership of $12.50 a month right now, and get us to our goal. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
10 more people giving in these next couple of minutes. And I want to thank Mary in Leominster. Also, we heard from Lawrence in Cranston, Rhode Island, who says support unbiased journalism for his sanity. And that's why he gave right now. We hope you'll join with them. Now we're down to just 7 more people to give, supporting Boston Public Radio. We're going to go to the news and then back to more Boston Public Radio. We hope you'll give while you're listening. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. And the Worcester Art Museum, presenting Flora in Winter, with artworks reimagined and stunning floral arrangements all throughout the museum. February 27th through March 2nd. Tickets available at the door. WorcesterArt.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour number 2, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. It's national security expert Everett's Juliette Kayyem with the reaction to Donald Trump doubling down on the threat to expel all Palestinians from Gaza, that hostage released by Putin. And here in the U.S., Homeland Security Kristi Noem accusing FBI officials of leaking planned ICE raids in L.A.
I'm Marjorie Egan. It has been 5 years since the COVID shutdown in America under the first Trump administration. We'll have a conversation about the state of public health, health in general, and science in a second Trump term with Brown University's Dr. Ashish Jha, former White House COVID-19 response coordinator for Joe Biden. And beyond our borders, what the end of USAID means for global health. That's next on the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Senate has just confirmed Tulsi Gabbard to serve as a Director of National Intelligence. NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports on the vote, which included a no from Republican Senator Mitch McConnell.
Republicans praise Gabbard's plans to reduce inefficiencies and refocus national intelligence. The number 2 GOP leader, John Barrasso, stressed her vision for peace through strength.
Washington wants to trust our intelligence agencies again. We need to take an axe to the weaponization of these very agencies.
Some Senate Republicans cited Gabbard's praise for Edward Snowden, a former contractor who leaked classified material, as an issue. But after Gabbard gave assurances she would guard against unauthorized disclosures, they voted for her. Gabbard served in the House for 8 years as a Democrat, but Senate Democrats argued she didn't have the experience or judgment to lead the agency. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
An administration official confirms to NPR the U.S. is freeing a Russian national jail for alleged money laundering in exchange for securing the release of American teacher Mark Fogel. The deal to swap Alexander Vinnik for Fogel. One of President Trump's top immigration advisors says he is not happy with the rate at which the government is deporting immigrants. NPR's Adrian Florido reports border czar Tom Homan says he wants federal agents to work faster to carry out Trump's mass deportation plans.
Speaking outside the White House, Homan claimed the government is making deportation arrests at 3 times the rate of the Biden administration. That would be about 1,000 a day. He called that good.
But I'm not satisfied. There's more criminal aliens that need to be arrested, hundreds of thousands. Sanctuary cities are putting roadblocks up. We got leaks. So we need to increase the arrest of illegal aliens, especially those with criminal convictions.
Homan's recently been vocal about his anger at obstacles agents have faced, officials in sanctuary cities unwilling to help, a large raid in Colorado that fell flat after plans were leaked to the press. His comments come amid reports that 2 top officials at Immigration and Customs Enforcement have been demoted over the pace of deportations. Adrian Florido, NPR News.
The U.S. housing market could experience a more than $1.4 trillion loss in value. NPR's Julia Simon reports on the latest warning from the research firm First Street Analytics.
Home ownership has often been seen as a key part of the American dream. The hope for many was that a home could grow value and at the very least store value. Now more wildfires, flood events, and heat events, made more likely because of humans burning fossil fuels, have led insurance providers to increase premiums or withdraw from certain areas. Homes with more expensive insurance or no insurance could lose value. The analysis finds that by 2055, 84% of all census tracts may experience some form of negative property value impacts from climate risk.
That's Julia Simon. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston mayoral candidate Josh Kraft has a rent control plan for the city. Boston Business Journal reports that part of Kraft's housing plan calls for a voluntary form of rent control, meaning that if landlords agree to keep annual rent increases to no more than 5% plus any change in the consumer price index over 10 years, they would get a 20% tax rebate. And to be eligible, renters would need to make no more than twice the area median income. 2 grad students at Harvard University were charged in May for their involvement in a die-in protest at Harvard Business School. And on Monday, a Boston municipal court judge dismissed hate crime charges against them, although both still face assault and battery charges. The 2 students took part in a Harvard Business School protest over the Israel-Hamas conflict in October of 2023 and pleaded not guilty to the assault and civil rights charges at their arraignment in November. On Monday, Judge Stephen McLennan dismissed the misdemeanor civil rights violation for each student and then scheduled a February 27th status hearing on the assault charges. In sports, the Celtics host the Spurs at the TD Garden tonight. The Fleet are in New York. In the forecast, clouds low to mid-30s today. And then we got a wintry mix arriving after midnight. Snow at first with temperatures in the low 30s, and that snow will change to rain as we head towards tomorrow morning. High tomorrow, 40 degrees, sunny, windy, and 30 on Friday. And it looks like maybe more snow on Saturday. It is 33 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be here on Friday with a special Valentine's treat. Joanne Chang from Flower Bakery, Christopher Myers, her husband. They're also the duo behind Myers and Chang. February 26th, Ask the Auditor, who's Diana DeZaglio. She'll be here taking our questions and yours. And the Attorney General of the Commonwealth on March 5th. Andrea Campbell. That's also the day that Mayor Wu will be in front of Congress talking about immigration issues. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now at the library desk by Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN's senior national security analyst. Hello, Juliette.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
So Juliette Kayyem,
nice.
Tulsi Gabbard has just been confirmed to run intelligence for the United States of America. The only Republican that voted against her was Mitch McConnell. So I think most of us know that she's a little wacky, that she's a little oddly has a relationship with the butcher of used to run Syria, Assad, and odd fondness for Putin, and a lot of people are very.
Other than that, though, she's fabulous.
Yeah, I mean,
especially for this job.
But I guess the question is, will there be sufficient guardrails around her, or why does the average Joe and Jane care about this or should be worried about this?
Well, I mean, I think the best way you can describe her, the most complimentary way, would be she's opportunistic. That's the best way. That's the best compliment, which is she'll just be what you need her to be to get the position that she wants. So she's a Democrat when she needs to run for Congress in Hawaii. She is a Democratic nominee for president when she thinks that there's some window. She then is, sort of banished from the Democratic Party or leaves the Democratic Party, and then she'll be whatever a Republican wants her to be. And that's the best case scenario. So which just basically means that whatever directive she gets from the White House, she'll continue. The worst, and we just don't know yet because she's not sophisticated. She doesn't have a history. She has no policy. She just does whatever anyone writes a check for her to do, as we saw in Syria when she went to visit Syria and forgave the human rights abuses of the Assad regime. Is what we don't know is, can she keep a secret?
Exactly. That's the huge.
Or will other countries share?
That's the issue.
Well,
their
that's
intelligence?
the issue.
If I'm advising the Prime Minister of Britain or the President of France, I would probably keep the status quo for now until we could sort of get an assessment, because a lot of this stuff won't get directly to her. I mean, there's a whole bunch of big intelligence agencies that will continue to do what they do. I think we'll just have to see how they respond to us, if there's any leaks, if she's untrustworthy, or if she's just a pawn of the nation's enemies, and of course the European allies' enemies. And so that's why it matters, is that we have a highly compromised and self-absorbed and ambitious person now overseeing all the intelligence agencies. The best is that the Trump White House basically sort of controls what her mission is, and then that's just a political decision. The worst is that you have a very unqualified, very compromised person now running our intelligence agencies.
Okay, on that note, there is some good news. Last night, Mark Fogel, who had been sentenced to more than a decade for medicinal marijuana possession in Russia, to prison, was released. He went to the White House with Donald Trump. It really is good news.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful interview with his sister, who lives in Missouri, on your station, CNN, last night. That was really pretty beautiful. Here's what concerns me, and tell me if this is, I'm making too much of this, is when Trump was asked, what did he have to give up? He said very little. He didn't fill in with blanks, which I think is fine. But I worry that when the next day, the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, says, return to Ukraine's pre-war borders is, quote, unrealistic before the negotiations even begin, that Putin is using this, and Trump allegedly spoke to him this morning, as a way to soften his own image in the United States. So when Trump sides with Putin over Zelensky, there's a runway, essentially. It's been is that an unrealistic?
I think it is. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to have to just learn over the next 4 years is like whether any of these things that are said are really a strategy. We've already seen, it's only been 3 weeks, sort of a push this way and then a retraction and then a reconsideration or whatever. We've seen a lot of bad things, don't get me wrong, but we've also seen, we're going to do a tariff against Mexico and Canada. Everyone goes crazy. He draws back. Like, I mean, they sort of are fixing their own problems and creating. So what I can't tell about Hegseth, whose only qualification to be Secretary of Defense is that he's really good looking. Let's just admit that.
On TV.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I'm sure. I mean, he does look good coming off that plane. Is whether how authorized that was, and I say this honestly because you do have a split in the Trump administration, National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I'm not sure where they are right now. They've certainly been saying other things. So did Trump call Hegseth this morning and say that? Is Hegseth just like we've seen previously in the Trump administration's, the first one, do you have these people saying these things because they don't know any better? We saw Kristi Noem, the head of DHS, say something that then had to be retracted. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, forget Hegseth.
But if this is the new strategy, right? We have to view it as very pro-Russia, because if you're going to go into negotiations to end this war, why the first thing we say should not be our ally is unrealistic. It's that Russia's unrealistic.
So, but I'm less concerned. I'm not unconcerned. Less concerned about our strategy. I'm concerned about the Putin strategy. Out of the blue, obviously there were back channel things going on, and good for the Trump people for getting them out. For Fogel's release, I can't think of any reason for Putin to do it unless the conversation was you're going to be easier on us when there are Ukrainian talks with Russia.
I think it is as fair of an interpretation at this stage if you believe that there's a strategy out there. The one thing I just don't know is this Hegseth has a lot going on, and brains is not one of them.
Okay.
I mean, it's just.
But I don't know if he is good looking.
I've been very clear on this one that there's no one less you should be Secretary of Defense under these standards.
Really,
I mean, he's like, you've run something before. I mean, there's no reason that he is Secretary of Defense, and so I'm going to anticipate that there's going to be
Trump, Juliette, is the central casting president. We know that way back when he had the guy that ran Exxon, he had to have looked a certain way as Secretary of State, and Tulsi Gabbard. A lot of people would say she's a good-looking woman. Kristi Noem, good-looking woman. There's a pattern here.
Yeah, I did have a thought the other day that what if this entire cabinet took these jobs for the sole goal of their true ambition, which is to get a primetime slot on Fox News. Like, this is now what I think.
Well, he's going to move
all
up.
going to last 18 months.
I don't care if they get it, if they do a decent job. Let them get
but
whatever the hell
I
they
do
want.
think, like, Hegstad's like, the Saturday, Sunday slot is a little
You don't
low
want
for me.
that. The kids,
I want the 8 o'clock.
soccer games.
I want
You don't
the
want to
8
miss
o'clock.
those. Yeah,
exactly.
you go. That's
well,
right.
Scott, when you have 18 kids because you have 3 wives and several
Okay,
mistresses,
let's move on.
I'm there.
Enough.
No,
Okay,
do
fine.
not stop me because this
fine.
one.
Yeah.
Juliette, we're going to, in a minute after we do the pledge break, we're going to talk to you about what's going on in Gaza. Before we do, you mentioned in passing some of the litigation around Trump and his executive orders and others, and it would be normal for us to discuss, for example, the litigation happening in Rhode Island around birthright citizen. Around freeze in federal payments, the birthright citizenship case. Can you just explain to people why we cannot talk about these things with you?
I appreciate you letting me do that. Right?
Okay.
I won't say anything, as is known by some who follow these things. My husband is the chief judge of the First Circuit, and I think it's just responsible and to the judiciary and to our government that I don't pontificate about anything that could be used or that could be misinterpreted. And
all these cases are likely to be appealed to the First Circuit.
They're in there. So I think it's just a general rule I've had, and I think it's the right one. And if you want me to there's plenty I can pontificate on.
Here's what I'd like to know, and we'll leave your husband out of this, but a lot of people have been anticipatory obedience to Donald Trump. We talked about this briefly this morning. We've changed some of our wording around
I saw that,
here at GBH too. But I wonder about the judges, because the judges have their necks on the line, like beneath the guillotine, really, like everybody else. Musk said the judge should be impeached that did something he didn't like. So you wonder about that. Are they going to be able to get security? Are they going to be protected if they do something in defiance of the president? Okay,
I read Twitter just like you.
She reads Twitter just like I do. Okay.
Well, we know, by the way, a couple of years ago what happened to a judge and her family, and there are a lot of threats, and there was a killing in that individual case. We talked to Nancy Gertner about it. So we should worry about that.
Because they're human beings like everybody else. They have families like everybody else, and most everybody else is obeying preemptively.
By the way, we should say, in fairness, because we discussed this yesterday with, I think, Cara Rose from the ACLU, Trump went out of his way repeatedly in the Oval Office yesterday to say, I will, of course, comply, I'm paraphrasing, with court orders. I have always complied with court orders. And whether you buy that or not, and whether it's real or not, I think we have an obligation to say he said it more than once.
But we should also point out that his vice president, who himself is a lawyer, has implied that that's not what they're going to do. That the judges cannot be interfering with the executive's power. So it's kind of a fraught time. In any case, we're going to get back with talking to Juliette Kayyem after this brief break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Braude, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Okay, I believe this is the last day of our pledge break. So if you have been hesitating and you are fans of GBH and what goes on here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this is your opportunity to chip in to what we do, because you can listen to us for free, but we are dependent on the on the generosity of our listeners to keep this ship afloat. So here's my opportunity to do what I always like to do when we have the Eton Crank Radio. There it is right there.
Very nicely done.
Cranking it away as a demonstration.
That's very
Today,
nice.
for $12.50 a month, we will thank you with the Eton Crank Radio. As we've said so many times, Jim, it gets AM, FM radio, National Weather Service channel. This is the thing to have if you have like a hurricane or a blackout or any awful thing. Doesn't need any batteries. LED flashlight is built in. You just crank the thing and it powers it right up. And Jim always makes fun of this here, but I tell you something.
I'm not making fun
the
of
GBH
anything.
News dry bag, this is what you take with you to the beach in the summer, because you can put your phone in there, your keys in there, your sunscreen in there, your lipstick in there, anything you don't want to get wet.
You can put your Eton emergency
You can put,
crank
that's right, in
radio
case there's
there.
an emergency at the beach, you will be ready, but you can see
good.
through it on the other side so you can find everything. These are two neat gifts. I'm a big fan of the Eton.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm going to see if
I
I
was
can...
listening to the morning news this morning, and one of the pledge people said that the dry bag was, quote, fashionable. Would you consider that to be fashionable, Marjorie? I know you love the dry bag.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I put it inside my beach bag, and I take it out when I need
Very
it. But
nice.
anyway,
Okay,
the number
go
is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
I can't believe Marjorie didn't say this. Marjorie, I like pledge a lot. Marjorie's not so crazy about it. Today is the last day.
Last day.
Pledge
Last day, that's right.
888-897. You did say that?
I did say that. Yes, I did.
888-8, I wanted to say it again.
okay.
888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. By the way, the dry bag, I mean, it's a twofer. You get two things. I'm not in love with the dry bag, but I love the Eton emergency crank radio. But it is a real utilitarian. Is that the right word? I mean, she's Miss Security, whatever
Security
it is.
Mom.
You got a problem.
All security moms.
I am the combination crank radio with the dry bag. It's like, this is tsunami readiness.
That's right.
This is what
She's a
everyone
beach
needs
kid
to be
from
ready. I'm
California,
a beach
so
kid from
Have it in
California.
your
We just have the
escape bag.
Good. It's better than the fanny pack.
Thank you. In
You
any
guys
case,
have come
that
a
is
long
for
way,
sure.
baby.
So here's the
You have
last
come a long
day.
way.
If you want the dry bag Eton crank radio combo, that's great. $12.50 a month, $150 all at once. But again, as I say every day, that shouldn't be why you give. You should give if you care about and value what you get from our colleagues at the station. And if you do, it's the last day. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're continuing our conversation with Juliette Kayyem. Before we do, we're going to talk about Gaza. Let me just say, Jamie just pointed out to me, vis-a-vis our conversation about Mark Fogel's release and Trump talking to Putin this morning. Here is a report from National Public Radio. Trump said on Wednesday he had spoken with Putin about the war in Ukraine and other issues, said they agreed to visit each other's nations, have the team start negotiations on the war in Ukraine. Quote, we both reflect on the great history of our nations. This is on Truth Social. We agreed to work together very closely, including visiting each other's nations. We have also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations. We'll begin by calling Zelensky the president, which I'll do right away. This, to me, proves the point I made before, that the release of Fogel, which is a wonderful thing, was to soften Putin's image, and then the negotiations begin. And I hope they're better for Ukraine than Pete Hegseth suggests.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to Gaza. This is a clip of President Trump claiming the United States does not plan to buy Gaza, but will, quote unquote, cherish it. He said this at a press conference with Jordan's King Abdullah II looking on, I think, with some concern yesterday. Here it is.
You've said before that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East.
By the way, if you can explain that, you get a free Eton emergency crank radio.
I'm cherishing Gaza.
I mean, lots of people seem to think there's just another one of these things he's throwing out there because there's no chance in hell anything like this is going to happen. But what are the implications of?
Yeah, I mean, there are consequences for even floating the idea. I think the understanding is that Jared Kushner at Harvard about a year ago said in a talk that Gaza has a future because it has a great ocean and resort feel. Like anyone who's looked at pictures of Gaza, it's the most. You kind of wonder what kind of mind would even think about that when you have children and women starving and getting killed.
Well, Trump called it himself the Riviera.
The Riviera.
Future,
So I think Trump sort of liked that idea, like, oh, this is a positive way, throws it out there. The world really pushes back, in particular the Arab countries, but also our allies, and also like, okay, so wait, we're in Greenland, we're in Panama, we're now in Canada, and now we're in Gaza. Like, this is not making sense to anyone. So he's just trying to walk back again, another situation in which the statement of it makes clear what his intention is, which is you're going to screw the Palestinians. Like, there's no interest whatsoever in them. And I read someone saying, I read a tweet once, I wish I had saved it, but it said the problem with the way most people talk about the Middle East is that they forget that there's already people there. The Palestinians have no intention of leaving Gaza, and Israel has no intention of recognizing the Palestinians. So we're in this continual stalemate. Jordan's president is very, very interesting. I've been to Jordan a bunch. He look, it's a kingdom. I'm not going to compliment it, first of all, but he has held steady through a very tumultuous time, through the Arab Spring, and now and the Gaza war. But there's no way that he would agree to accepting Palestinians, the Egyptians.
He said he'd take 2,000 kids.
Yeah, 2,000
who need
kids.
health care.
Yeah, I mean, they probably were. Honestly, they probably were doing that already. But look, this is the challenge of the Palestinian crisis, which is, the Arabs are hardly. The Arabs could care less. I mean, honestly, the Arab countries. I don't mean the Arabs, the Arab countries. And the idea that you're gonna think that they're gonna provide a solution. They have been not helpful. You think about Egypt and how Egypt at the beginning of the war wouldn't even they kept saying they were trying to open up some gate. You remember when they were like, yeah, we're trying to open a gate. It took like 3 weeks to open up a gate. So I don't know what the long-term solution is until we get through Saturday's deadline with the potential ceasefire and the exchange of hostages. That's in a few days, and
Well,
this is
stay
the
with
deadline.
that. What happens with that? Trump said in the Oval Office a day or two ago, if the Hamas, does not release all remaining hostages by noon on Saturday, something like all hell will break loose.
No one knows what that means. I mean, I was just in the region. No one knows what that means, and a lot of them just, the world leaders now know to ignore them. I was heading to just Morocco. I mean, so it's not like in the middle of all of it. The night that that Trump said this about Gaza, and for the first time ever, I was a little bit nervous about traveling as an American. I then arrived there, and you talk to people, and I have friends there and stuff, and they ignore him better than we do in some ways. There was almost no reaction. The leadership pushed back, and now he's just talking about cherishing Gaza, which the more important thing is that we find places for Palestinians to return to.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that they're ignoring them, because the first time around with President Trump, you coined that great phrase, pace the rage, and that was my mantra. I said that every morning when I get up. I said it 10 times during
Ignore
the day.
the rage.
But you did no pacing, I should say.
I didn't do much pacing. I tried my best. But now people have said things like, just don't believe him. Just don't believe him. He throws at all these things. We don't believe them. So, Security Mom, what is your strategy for getting through Trump, too? Because, you talk to people constantly. Just talk to somebody here who says they haven't been able to listen to the news for since inauguration because they're so obsessed.
Yeah, there's lots of news that's distressing. We have an election not too far away. We'll see how. I think the resistance is going to. I think the resistance is going to look different, right? I mean, well, what do you want? I mean, the obvious truth is the Republican Party, until it gets a backbone and asserts a pushback on Trump, we are left to following really bad headlines.
Well, how about the Democratic Party?
Well, the Democratic Party, obviously. But you ask about Tulsi Gabbard. Like, I didn't lose any Democratic votes on that one, and the Republicans could have why the Republicans haven't decided 20 of them will vote in a block, so no single one of them could be focused on is ridiculous. And McConnell's backbone now, I don't know what that's about, but so
he's not running again, and he's 80 years old. He's got a lot of health problems.
There's going to be a lot of bad headlines, and some of them will be meaningless, and some of them will be meaningful.
Okay.
So you got to figure out which ones are actually meaningful.
Do you have a slogan for me?
Like pacing the rage.
Yeah. I'll think of one by
Thank
next
you.
week.
I need one. I need a mantra.
You know what I say? I mean, my Zen is because I'm off of a lot. I'm consuming stuff differently now. I think, did I tell you this? The what, so what, now what? That sort of in disaster management, when something bad happens and you have to sort of figure out what's going on, you ask yourself, the situational awareness is what is happening. So what is it meaningful, right? So Trump says this about Gaza. Is it real?
No.
And then now what? Well, if it is real, now what can I do? And a lot of this, generically is being played out in courts. But look, I mean, he backtracked on the tariffs, not because, of course, we know what speaks to Donald Trump. The markets.
Yeah,
markets.
Yeah, but we only have a minute left, and I'm sorry to repeat myself from yesterday, but I want to take issue, not so much with you, but this notion what's real and what's an illusion. Mass deportation is not real yet. However, we have spoken to scores of people who say people who are scared to death, regardless of the facts, aren't sending their kids to school, not having their kids go to the doctor for a necessary vaccine, are not leaving their houses to go to their job.
USAID is real.
Well, we're going to talk about that with Dr. Jha in a couple of minutes. But the point I'm trying to make, inartfully or unartfully, whatever it is even those things that aren't real can cause real damage in human lives.
And you asked me about the Democrats and what we should. So we need to tell the story better about governments, what government means in people's lives. There is a measles, I'm looking at the doctor, measles outbreak in Texas. Okay, there's no eggs, right? There's a recovery in North Carolina that's stalled because FEMA's not functioning. This is when people need government to work, they're just not seeing it. There's been one major airline disaster and 4 additional incursions or fender benders in the last 3 weeks. I mean, these bad things are going to happen, and we need to be ready to tell the story of why. And I'm going to say something else. Now, can I be hardball about Democrats?
Quickly, yes.
Okay, very quickly. Why are we talking about specific programs or defending this or that? The approach should be, right, essentially this is not how it's done. And there's a reason why it's not done that way is because, you don't want just 5 people getting super rich out of this and then a whole bunch of people. In fact, I mean, we don't have to meet them halfway. And I think that's a way for people to think about it. I have a different role, but if people are wondering what the resistance looks like for them, what, so what, now what? And focus your energies on the now what.
You got to go because you got to call Chuck Schumer and tell him that. It's good to see you, Juliette Kayyem.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much, Juliette Kayyem. I expect my slogan next week, Juliette. I can wait for it. Okay. What's so what? Okay, that's it right now? What's so what?
Now what?
Okay, got it. I'm writing it down.
Thank you.
Okay, Juliette Kayyem is former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard University School of Government, and CNN's senior national security analyst. Thanks a lot, Juliette. Coming up, Dr. Ashish Jha. Can't wait to talk to him. He is Dean of Brown's School of Public Health. You may remember him. He was the czar during COVID. He was under President Biden. I'm going to ask him about a lot of things having to do with public health, including RFK Jr. running health in the United States of America. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference. Please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
We say general things. You like specifics and stories. When I say if you value what you get at the station, someone like you would say, give some details. Let's talk about today.
Okay.
You got an hour of the mayor in which anybody listening could call, text, or come to the library and ask the mayor a question.
They were complaining that you were talking too much, Jim.
Thank you. We have Juliette Kayyem, who is obviously one of the premier national security people in the country. We're about to talk to Dr. Jha, who is the White House COVID-19 response coordinator. I think one of the most calming, important influences during this multi-year crisis. And then Cy Montgomery, who causes comfort throughout. That's just one day of Boston Public Radio. So if you value that, and I sure as hell do, please call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. It's the last day of the pledge drive. Give what you can as soon as you can.
And you know, I should say too, along those lines, we get swamped with text sometimes, and that's why we can't get to all of them. But we try to read as many as we can. People make great points, and we're very grateful to get your input on guests and what you think about what we have to say as well. So anyway, the number again is 888-897-9424. gbhnews.org is the website. Today we have the Eton Crank Radio. I will crank it here. There it is.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
this is like an emergency radio when you have no power.
Not like an emergency
Well, it is an emergency radio. That's why they call it the Eton Crank Radio. The emergency
No, that's
radio.
why they call it the emergency
Crank Radio.
Whatever
Yeah.
it is.
And on a lighter note, the dry bag where you can take things out in a boat to the beach in the summertime. And there are two great enticements for you to contribute today, $12.50 a month. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to
Boston Public Radio.
What was that? Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
in a
we're
second.
here.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. My apologies. Am I supposed to be doing this or you are? Oh, I am. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here on Friday, and no tickets or RSVP required. You know, there are very few good things that came out of this COVID nightmare. One of the few was America was introduced to Dr. Ashish Jha. He's here today. You know him as the former White House COVID-19 response coordinator under President Biden. Nowadays, he's back in his post as the Dean of Brown University's School of Public Health. Dr. Jha, it's great to see you.
Thanks for
being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Let's start with a great piece you wrote for Stat News about the World Health Organization. I mean, you very frankly talked about errors they've made, places where there could be reform, but you don't think we should be getting out of it. Why not?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me back.
Sure.
Our pleasure.
So WHO is a flawed organization, but it is an essential organization. We need the WHO, the world needs WHO, and we should be using our leverage to make WHO better. But by walking out of WHO, as President Trump has done, he's done a few things. One, he's weakened that organization substantially. Second, he's created an opportunity for the only other obvious country that can step up and step in, and that's China.
Yeah.
And third, he has made it much, much harder for us to manage disease outbreaks and other challenges around the world, which I think will lead to more cases of things like Ebola landing on our shores because we're not working with WHO to stamp out diseases elsewhere. So this is just a very, I think, a grievous mistake that the president has made. And unfortunately, the world will suffer, but so will the American people.
Do you think that latter point to me is so important? I hope most of our fellow Americans care about other people less fortunate than we. But at the end of the day, for everybody almost, is what is this going to mean to me? Do you think the average American has any idea what the WHO could mean and does mean to them and their family?
They probably don't. Most Americans probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about WHO. And it sounds like some organization out there that works on issues, but how does it affect me? And part of the job of those of us in public health is to help connect the dots, to help people understand that the world is safer, my kids are safer, our families are safer when we have a functioning global health system that, stamps out diseases where they arise as opposed to letting them become global. We've seen what happens when they become global. Not great. We got to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Should your former boss, the former president, have done more around the whole China issue with the WHO and COVID than he did, which maybe would have taken the issue away from his successor?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was at the White House, we certainly talked about more pressure on China to come clean on what happened. I think we still don't know how COVID got started. That is still a question that is up in the air. And I think we should have done more, President Biden, and under that administration, WHO needs to have done more. I would have been very happy if President Trump came in and pushed for that as the primary issue, not pulling out of WHO altogether.
And let's talk about USAID. I saw some reporting by CNN last night about they just shut everything down. Boom. Like on Monday, you can treat people in the hospital. On Tuesday, the hospital is closed. And there was this really upsetting story about a little 9-year-old girl who is on oxygen. She's going to die because she's not going to be able to get the oxygen. So what I don't get about this, unless you just want to be cruel, is, same thing. Okay, it needs reform. There's money wasted there. But why you do that on Monday, so on Tuesday, the hospital's cleaned out. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. Look, Elon Musk, and I don't obviously totally understand his strategy, but my sense is his strategy is to go in and just blow things up. just completely dismantle agencies, dismantle programs, and then let somebody else clean up the mess later if there is a mess to clean up. And that has been his strategy with AID. I mean, USAID, there's no agency that's perfect. I even hate to start there because that's obviously always true.
Right.
The question is, what are the major things USAID is spending money on, right? It's got a big budget. Congress oversees that budget. The number one, one of the top programs is PEPFAR. This is a program that has saved 25 million lives, gives HIV meds to 20 million people across the African continent.
Created by a Republican president, George W. Bush.
George W. Bush. It is arguably the most important global health program we've had in the history of, modern history of America. President Bush created it. It's been bipartisan. If you want to take that, down, you want to slow that down, you want to get rid of it over time, you want to do that in a thoughtful way so you don't leave 20 million people one day getting meds, the next day not getting their medications.
Which could mean that the HIV comes back.
It
AIDS
will
comes
come back. It
Yep.
will come back. And we're going to see more resistance. And over time, we're going to see people dying. It's just so incredibly destructive and cruel, this idea that we just don't care what happens to other people. I think this is another self-goal because, look, America has hard power. We have our military. And we have soft power. One of the things that has been very clear, those countries that get PEPFAR money, yes, we're saving lots of lives. But you know what else happens in those countries? Surveys show that people in those countries are incredibly pro-American. That means their politicians tend to be very pro-American. We are building goodwill and doing it while saving lives. And this just is this incredibly destructive thing of just going in and shutting it all down. Not only will cost lives, it will harm American reputation.
Well, and also, and as you say, it makes them feel better about Americans when we come to their aid, to their side. And to say what you said about WHO, and when China fills in where we step away, they'll feel good about a country that Donald Trump thinks is an enemy of the United States.
But the other thing is, it's just kind of bizarre to me, the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, more money than anybody alive, cracking down on desperate children. I mean, I don't know why that doesn't shock the conscience, as the word goes, to a point where people are saying, you can't stop it. You could scale it back slowly so a little 9-year-old girl can get her oxygen someplace else or figure that out, or not just have her mother sitting there watching her gas to death.
Yeah. So the cruelty of that is just unbelievable. But there's another part of this, which is, look, there is a way we do these things in this country. If you don't like it, we should work on changing it. But Congress allocates these monies.
Right.
And Congress has allocated money for PEPFAR, for these programs, these other programs that Musk is trying to shut down. And if the feeling of the president is, these are not good programs, we shouldn't do them, guess what? He's got a Republican Congress.
Right.
Make them vote on it.
That's exactly what Marjorie said this morning in our meeting. Yeah.
Make them vote on it.
And they will, actually.
Yeah,
probably.
and then hold them accountable. So then the American people can hold them accountable.
By the way, speaking of Republicans, you know who the biggest Republican advocate for USAID has been for years? The current Secretary of State,
Rubio,
who is now totally in the tank to the president. Before we take a break, you were at Harvard School of Public Health. Now you're the boss. You don't call it the boss. Whatever you are.
I certainly am not a boss of anything.
You're the dean at the Brown School of Public Health. How are the next generation that you're dedicated to bringing along, when they see public health coming apart at the seams, not because of those who are dedicated to it, but to those who don't like it, how hard is it to tell them this is the place you should be?
I find the students actually more resilient in some ways than some of our faculty and
Really?
staff. The students are there because they're passionate and they're seeing what is happening, and what they're doing is they're coming to me and others and saying, how do we be smarter, more effective in this environment?
That's great to hear.
And that's exactly what we need.
Terrific.
Okay, we're going to be right back with Dr. Ashish Jha, Dean of Brown University School of Public Health, and COVID czars, I like to call him. We're going to take a quick pledge break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support. So please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
Okay, this is the last day of our pledge
It
drive,
is.
I believe.
It is.
That's right. And if you've been listening to this station for a while and you haven't given, maybe this is the day you can do it. We, too, are in the crosshairs of Elon Musk, and we hope that that's not going to be a huge problem, but it's something to think about if you've been hesitating, because we get most of our funding, more than 70%, because of the generosity of listeners like you who give $5 a month, $10 a month, or just $10 all at once if that's all you can afford. We appreciate that too, and we hope that, like I said, if you've been hesitating, you do it today. We got two great gifts today. We got this dry bag, which is great for going to the beach in the summertime with your phone, your keys, and your sunscreen and all the things you don't want to get all full of sand or full of water. That's great. And the Eton emergency crank radio, which is a great thing to have if you have a hurricane or you have some other emergency where you don't have any power. It doesn't need power. You crank the little baby and it operates. So the number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Last day again. I've elevated procrastination to an art form in my life, and I can tell you, when you miss an opportunity to do something that you wanted to do, you feel pretty bad afterwards. So it takes 2 minutes. Do it now. If you value what we and our colleagues do, and I hope you do, because we sure as hell do, here's your opportunity to contribute whatever you can in whatever amount you can. If you can't afford the $12.50 a month or $150 all at once, or you have no interest in the emergency whatever in the dry thing, give whatever you can. Give $5 once if that's what it is. Makes you deeper engaged in what it is that we all try to do. We're dependent on you. Our number is 888-897-9424 to give, or gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Braude, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're speaking to the Dean of the School of Public Health at Brown. I'm only laughing because during the break, Dr. Jha reminded me that last time I was here, we put him in a tough spot when I mentioned that you give me every Christmas Bacon of the Month Club. And I want to update you, Doctor. You know what I got last month from her? Sausage of the Month Club.
Oh, that is an upgrade.
Really an upgrade. It is.
That's right.
It is a hell of an upgrade.
One year it was Salami of the Month Club.
It was.
I'm trying to keep in the same
Let's hope
general,
that comes
general
back.
area.
Exactly.
But Dr. Jha, you wrote a piece about our RFK Jr., who may be approved any moment
minute.
now to
Yeah.
run healthcare in the United States. For the average person that's concerned about him, he's not going to get rid of vaccines, I don't think, or maybe he can. I mean, what is the worst case scenario? We hope there's people around him that could keep him from going off the rails, but I don't know.
So the problem with RFK Jr., if you listen to him, a lot of what he says makes a lot of sense. He talks a lot about importance of healthy habits and diet and exercise and sunshine, all true. But the problem is, this is a man who doesn't fundamentally believe in modern medicine.
Yeah.
I think there's no other way to say it. I mean, you know, people, like even in his hearings, people were like, I were asking about vaccines, and he said, well, if you show me the evidence that these things are safe. I'm like, show you the evidence? Like, we have randomized trial after randomized trial after randomized trial. Did you just miss all of them? I don't know what happened. The problem is, he is willfully ignoring the evidence. So let's talk about the consequences of this. This is a man who has said, we should not invest in any new medications in terms of research for NIH for 8 years.
8 years. Cancer stuff and Alzheimer's stuff,
yes,
right?
like that's outrageous. Like, we can't do that. Now, on the question of what he can do on vaccines, people are like, well, he's one guy. He's not one guy. He's not only just a secretary of HHS. I've spent a lot of time in Washington over the last couple of months. The truth is, he is putting his people into key positions across the agency. He is going to have enormous power to dismantle the vaccine enterprise of our country. And it is not just going to affect a small number of people, it's going to affect everybody, including kids in Massachusetts. Let me explain why. So first of all, the Secretary and HHS oversees Vaccines for Children's program. About half the kids in America get their vaccines through this program. He can dismantle it. He can totally get it going in wrong directions. That means millions of kids won't get their vaccines. That's one problem. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, if my kids are vaccinated, do I really care? You do. So if you take something like measles, kids are not fully vaccinated against measles until they turn about 4 or 5 years old, just because it takes multiple shots. So if you have a 2-year-old who's gotten their shots so far, encounters another kid who has measles, your 2-year-old can get measles, because they're not fully up to date on their vaccines, because they're only 2. So when a large chunk of the community doesn't have vaccinations, all of us are going to be affected. It's not something we can segregate out and say, well, other people will make bad decisions. We all live in one community. We're all going to suffer from that.
Why you spend a lot of time in Washington these days?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is I've been talking to a lot of people in both the Trump White House and Trump HHS.
You have?
I have. And
do they listen?
Listen enough that they call me back.
Oh, that's good to hear. Okay.
Look, inside the Trump HHS right now, there's essentially a battle between two groups of people. Group one are former Trump administration officials who were around the first time. These are Republicans. These are like thoughtful, smart conservatives. We often disagree on policy, but we have largely similar values. That's one group. They're in a battle right now with the RFK people to try to get into key positions. And a lot of what I'm doing is encouraging my friends who are Republicans, who I think are reasonable and thoughtful, to go into the administration and fight the good fight, because they need to be in there.
So one last thing about this. The only thing that is more upsetting to me, I don't know 1/10 what you do about this, but I know what I read about the ascension of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is the utter silence. There's a brilliant piece, I think, in The Hill the other day by organizations like the American Medical Association, whatever the Pediatric Doctors Association is. How do they justify? Is that another two groups and others who are just scared to death of what Donald Trump's going to do to them?
This is the issue right now. So right now there's a lot of fear in Washington. There's a lot of fear elsewhere of opposing this administration. And it's been interesting, that the people who are willing to speak up are often individuals, and yes, they face wrath. Organizations are nervous. What I think will happen is, as these court rulings start falling against Trump, because a lot of what he's doing is just patently illegal, my hope is we're going to start seeing a little bit of backbone, a little bit of courage from these major organizations. Because what Donald Trump is doing, and particularly RFK Jr. is doing, is undermining the reasons these organizations exist. Why do we have an American Medical Association? To promote medicine and health in America. And if there's an administration that's undermining that, I do need and want and expect to see the AMA stand up. I expect that from all these organizations, and we need to give them the courage. And then when they do it, we need to back them.
Well, it would have been nicer had they stood up before he's confirmed later today.
Look, I'll take it whenever they're willing to do it.
Well, I know you will.
Let's talk about the Centers for Disease Control that's had a lot of their files purged.
Yes.
And also apparently is enjoined from having scientific meetings or communicating with other organizations about health issues. So what
Bird flu, for example.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. Look, because it's not just like, oh, you can't go to a scientific meeting, which of course is important, but they're not allowed to really communicate with state health agencies. So the way public health in America works is most of the decisions happen at the state level. But states rely on CDC for data, for information, for guidance. The experts are often at the CDC. When that information flow gets cut off, states become far less functional and effective. And that's why we're seeing outbreaks, and we're seeing states struggle because they're not getting the kind of guidance. The other place is when there's an outbreak, let's say, of a norovirus or something in a community, CDC puts out alerts to doctors and says, be on the lookout for this. Those alerts aren't going out. So now doctors are flying blind. They don't have access to local epidemiology. And they're not going to be as effective when you go to see your doctor. So this is very harmful. This has got to stop. The kind of censorship of government scientists has got to stop.
Well, I would think during COVID, I mean, how many times after COVID, even when we were well into COVID, where people maybe got sick, didn't know how many days they had to stay home, to how many days they had to wear masks. Where'd you go? You went to the CDC
Correct.
and get all this information.
Or you watch this guy on television.
Or you watch this guy on television. But for other areas, that is going to be gone.
It is going to be gone. The other part of the problem is that they've been taking down data. And that has also, yes, it's bad for researchers. But when I was in the White House, people could go to the CDC, look up data, and then hold me accountable because I was a government official. And so that data is how the American people hold their government accountable. When you pull that data down, it makes it much, much harder to have accountability. This is a huge problem in terms of government accountability, if nothing else.
And one other thing, we had an outbreak in my kids' 8th grade a few years back of chickenpox because the vaccine was new and some kids hadn't gotten the vaccine, and it was terrible. Oftentimes, if you get chickenpox as an older person, you are scarred. It leaves like divots in your face, like acne does, or all over your body. Talk about, I think many people, not me because I'm old enough to know, measles, mumps, and rubella are bad.
They are
scary diseases.
They are bad. I mean, one of the luxuries we've had over the last couple of decades is we haven't seen much of them because of vaccines.
Right.
And so we have forgotten what exactly it meant. Like right now, there's an outbreak of measles in Texas. I think you guys talked about that in the last. I think there are 9 kids who are hospitalized. Kids are going to die from measles. Measles is a lethal disease that kills children. These are not mild illnesses that we're protecting against. These are very serious illnesses. One of the things that people often say to me, people who question vaccines, are like, well, what did we do 100 years ago when we didn't have vaccines? I'm like, you know what we did?
Died.
We buried our
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
We buried children in droves. Yes. That is not what making America healthy again is about. We're not going back on that.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and also, if you have a child that has some other issue, maybe childhood cancer or something, who can't get vaccinated, it's almost a death warrant. You know, if you're not going to get vaccinated, you infect somebody else. How would you feel if your kid?
Yeah. So that's the other part of this. Is okay. So there's an element of like talking about does your kid really need it or not? I mean, the kids need it. All my kids got fully vaccinated on all of these things. But here's the other issue.
So did Robert Kennedy's, by the way. One of the great ironies. Go ahead.
That is. So it's sort of a do what I say, not what I do. But in this case, there are children, a kid, as you said, who might be undergoing chemotherapy because they have leukemia. They need every kid around them to protect them. So there's a cruelty element here of like, you're not going to protect that kid with cancer?
Yeah.
So I find this entire movement towards we don't care about our neighbors, we don't care about our friends, just really distressing.
Vote for Robert Kennedy's nomination, 53 in favor, 47 against. We love talking to you, Dr. Jha. We hope you're back soon. Thanks for your work and thanks for your time.
Oh my God! So he's in. Okay. We're speaking with Dr. Ashish Jha. You know him as former White House COVID-19 response coordinator under President Biden. Nowadays, he's back at his post, Dean of Brown University School of Public Health. Dr. Jha, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Coming up after the 1 p.m. news, naturalist and author Simon Montgomery for a break. We're going to get into the animal world, talking about what the animals in our world are doing for Valentine's Day. It's getting hot and heavy, apparently, in the meadows and woodlands of New England. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Libraries, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
And this is the last day of the GBH Winter Membership Drive here, and we're looking for your support in these final hours. It's been going well. We're very pleased about that. We're right where we need to be, but hitting each goal in these remaining hours will determine whether we make the goal on time tonight by 7 o'clock. We're poised to do it, but we sure can use your help right now. Good afternoon. I'm Jack Callahan along with Melissa Jones.
Thanks, Jack, and thank you. We did make last hour's goal, which is fantastic, and we do that one person at a time. Right now, we're looking for 15 contributions in the next 5 minutes. Be one of those 15 to keep us on track to make sure we can wrap up this membership drive on target and keep doing the great things that we do, that you look for us to do for you when you tune in to 89.7 GBH. GBHnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And BPR has a home here at WGBH, and that's because listeners like you stand up and make a contribution. That's what provides Jim and Marjorie their home, so they can bring all these guests in. And in their inimitable style, just keep us informed throughout the week, 3 hours a day. It's a lot of work that goes into programming for a live 3-hour program, but we're committed to that, and so is Jim and Marjorie. We're asking you to stand up and commit to them right now by making a contribution on this, the last day. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
How about this? Support GBH right now with a gift of $12.50 a month, and we'll be able to thank you with 2 popular gifts: the GBH dry bag and the Eton emergency radio. We were joking earlier, Marjorie probably has about 10 of these emergency radios. That if you don't have one, it's a must-have, because the weather changes in we say 10 minutes. You know, if you don't like the weather, don't hang in there because it'll change. The radio is going to tell you about that and keep you informed. And then the dry bag is going to keep it dry for you when you're out running around and enjoying the great outdoors. This is available only until 7 o'clock when this drive ends. So get on the phone or get online and give us that gift right now of $12.50 a month. GBHnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Oh, I want to thank Stephen from Salisbury for coming on as a new member. Welcome aboard. Every gift is important, but we love seeing new members come on and joining the team of supporters here at GBH. We're now looking for just 12 more contributions in the next few minutes to stay on track and end this hour. You know, there's a lot of part of this hour we gave to the mayor and the conversation without any interruption. knowing that our listeners would step up now and help us reach the goal. 12 more heroes to stand up. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
If you've never given to GBH, right now is the time to start. Right now, we're encouraging listeners to become members by giving what they can. It's a small amount to pay for a radio station that informs, educates, and inspires without commercials. And when you make that individual gift to GBH, you're part of a community that makes sure that this valuable public service always has a place on the radio in Boston. You can do your part right now by going to gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Yeah, this is the last day of the membership drive, and if you've been meaning to make a contribution to support your BPR listening, now is the time to do it. We will not be here tomorrow, courtesy of our listeners who become supporters. Jim and Margie will be here, and that's what it's all about, having the dollars to keep this kind of programming on the air. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
We've got a goal of just 7 people in just the next few minutes, so please, if you haven't given, now is the time to do that. Your contribution is the one that makes great news and important information possible for everyone in our community. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424. Give $12.50 a month right now and get yourself the dry bag and the Atan radio. It goes away at 7 o'clock. Do it now.
Support for GBH comes from you and Brown University pre-college programs, where high school students can prepare for college learning, experience college life, and make new friends. Over 300 course offerings available. precollege.brown.edu. And American Repertory Theater, presenting The Odyssey, Kate Hamill's newest world premiere adaptation that turns a contemporary lens on Homer's classic tale. Now playing through March 16th. amrep.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says he has spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine and other issues. He said they agreed to visit each other's nations and have their teams start negotiations immediately on the war in Ukraine. On his Truth Social platform, Trump said he would inform Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about the White House's conversation with the Kremlin. War on waste. That's the theme of the DOGE Congressional Subcommittee's first hearing, chaired today by Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. In a display of solidarity at the White House yesterday, President Trump and his DOGE point man, tech billionaire Elon Musk, defended the aggressive actions to downsize, touting them as a promise kept. NPR's Tamara Keith has more.
Musk was standing beside Trump, who was ready to sign an executive order that outlines a role for Musk's DOGE project in significantly culling the federal workforce. This was the first time that we've seen Musk on camera with Trump speaking at length about the unit known as the Department of Government Efficiency, which is upending Washington and spawning lawsuits claiming that what he and his team are doing is illegal.
NPR's Tamara Keith. Consumer prices in January were higher than expected in the U.S. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on the latest inflation data from the Labor Department.
Forecasters had expected to see some moderation in price hikes last month, but inflation remains stubbornly high. Consumer prices in January were up 3% from a year ago. Prices rose by 0.5% between December and January alone. Stripping out food and energy prices, which bounce around a lot, core inflation was also higher than forecasters had expected. Given the sticky price hikes, the Federal Reserve is expected to take its time before making any additional cuts to interest rates. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Health officials have confirmed that a dairy worker in Nevada tested positive for H5N1 bird flu. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the person been infected with a variant recently found in dairy cattle there. More from NPR's Will Stone.
The person only had mild symptoms and is recovering. Genetic sequencing of the virus shows it's the D1.1 variant of H5N1. That's the same variant that was recently discovered in dairy cattle in Nevada. That finding was significant because until now, it had only been seen in wild birds and poultry, not dairy cattle. Researchers are looking into whether the variant could be more dangerous for humans because it led to severe disease in 2 human cases, including a death in Louisiana. In the Nevada dairy worker, the CDC identified a mutation that suggests the virus is adapting to better replicate in mammals, but so far there's no evidence it's spreading between people. Will Stone, NPR News.
U.S. stocks are mostly lower this hour. The Dow is down 157 points at 44,431. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Cape Cod residents and advocates are speaking out against Governor Maura Healey's plan to close the Pocasset Mental Health Center in Bourne. Healey says the closure is a cost-saving measure. GBH's Eve Zuckoff was at a community meeting last night where an impassioned crowd called for the center to remain open.
State Senator Dylan Fernandez and State Representative David Vieira heard from dozens of community members extolling the work of the 16-bed facility. Speakers cited numerous examples of patients facing mental health crises each year, receiving help, and being kept out of the region's hospital emergency departments. Cliff Calderwood said the Pocasset Mental Health Center treated his son in 2017 when he struggled to stay on medication for his schizophrenia.
He came out of Pocasset facility and he stayed on meds ever since. He manages his own meds. He has a part-time job. So it's a real success story for Pocasset, and we need to preserve that for other people.
The lawmakers responded by saying they're going to do everything they can to save the facility before funding runs out at the end of this fiscal year. Eve Zuckoff, GBH News, 89.7.
Massachusetts gun rights advocates are supporting a proposal to lift a state ban on the sale of handguns to anyone between the ages of 18 to 20. The proposal, filed by Republican Representative John Gasky of Carver, would allow individuals 18 and older to apply for a firearm ID card without restrictions, and for a license to carry card under the same conditions set for those 21 and older. If passed, it would essentially repeal a state law restricting firearm access for that same age group. 33 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. Are you going to say we're back here on Friday?
We're back here. Yes, we are. We're back here on Friday for a Valentine's Day special with Joanne Chang, who runs the Great Flower Bakery. And with her husband, she also runs, Christopher Myers, that is. She runs Myers and Chang. So they're going to bring us some Valentine's Day cookies with some risque little sayings on them. On February 26th, we're going to be joined by the Auditor of the Commonwealth, Diana DeZaglia, who is trying to audit the legislature as the voters asked her to do in the last election. It hasn't happened yet. On Wednesday, March 5th, we're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Hello again, Jim.
Let me ask you a question. When the world is falling apart, Marjorie, who are you going to call?
Cy Montgomery.
That is exactly
That is right.
Joining us now on Zoom is naturalist, author, and the pride of Hancock, New Hampshire, and us, by the way, Cy Montgomery. Your latest book is the fabulous What the Chicken Knows. Cy, it's so great to see you. Terrific. How are you?
I'm great now that I'm talking to you two.
Oh.
Well, that's how we feel too. The feeling is mutual here, and especially when we're talking about, I just mentioned we're going to have a Valentine's Day edition with Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers. You have informed us that romance apparently is hot and heavy in the animal world in anticipation of this holiday, the Hallmark holiday, Valentine's Day. What are the animals doing?
Well, right now you can see evidence of foxes getting together. We had right in our yard, we saw a trail of footprints from one fox and then a trail of footprints from the other fox. They came together, and then there was this spot where they'd been rolling in the snow.
Oh my
They're
God.
really interested in that.
Oh my God.
They do the same kind of trysting that we do, and I love that because foxes are so smart. And meanwhile, you can hear at night the voices of barred owls calling out, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" And what they're doing is they're talking about their territory and discussing getting together. Interestingly, there's other animals who are out and about trying to get together to mate, including skunks. And this is dangerous, not for the same reason that, for example, porcupine mating is dangerous, which happens much later, but because great horned owls are very aware of this. And great horned owls will soon be sitting on eggs if they're not right now and very hungry. And who do they eat? They love skunks. And one time, Howard was out in the yard with our black and white border collie, Tess, and he saw this cinder floating in from nowhere. Well, what it was a great horned owl who saw that black and white thing and thought, "Ooh, that looks like a really, really big skunk. I think I won't." And then it flew away.
Well, but at least the skunk died happy. It was mating season.
But hold on. We assume this is not in honor of Valentine's Day. This is the time of the year that this mating goes on. And why is it now?
I think it's so that you could take advantage of food when it's available for your babies. For instance,
In the summer, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's usually about food. We think of mating season really more of a spring thing, the fling in the spring and
Right.
April in Paris and all that kind of stuff. But animals are doing their romantic thing in very inventive ways all throughout the year, all over the world. Very inspiring. I keep thinking of, geez, for a guy, it must be a bummer to have to think about bringing the flowers and the candy. But it's so much better than if you were a spider, in which case, forget the candy and the flowers, you get eaten.
Poor
and
spiders.
For most spiders, this is what happens. I mean, it's not very romantic at all. Some of them, though, get out of it by doing bondage. Spiders are so interesting.
Well, can you explain that a little bit exactly? What does that mean?
Well, there's these spiders called nursery spiders, and how the male manages to mate with the female without being eaten is he ties up some of her legs in the web so that he can get to her.
Oh my God.
It's a big problem being eaten by your mate. And, cannibalism is rampant in the spider world. But I love that there's so many ways that animals try to get around this. Have you ever seen, if you want to see something romantic and thrilling, have you ever seen the video of peacock spiders doing their mating dance?
No. A dance?
Oh my God, you've got to do this. Yeah, they're tiny, tiny little spiders, which you wouldn't know from the video. This is an Australian spider. And the males have these amazing abdomens that look like they have like happy faces on them, and they have blues and greens and reds, and they put their abdomen up so that you can see it almost like he's erecting some kind of TV screen. And he'll run to the side and he'll do this with his hands, as if he's like raving at a concert, and then run to the other side. And it's a really elaborate, beautiful dance. And many of the videos are set to music, and it really looks amazing.
Can you two just continue talking? I'm actually watching them do it right now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do spiders have any idea that this is their fate, the male spider? Do they have any way of intuiting this?
Oh, it's so hard to tell if they know what's ahead. But, we all, while we don't necessarily get eaten by our mates, I mean, all of us.
Not all the time.
At least not
Excuse me.
necessarily literally. But we're all headed toward completion of some kind.
Yeah.
And there's some consolation in dying in the arms or legs, many legs of your mate.
That's what Nelson Rockefeller said that, Jim. Remember
Right,
that?
I know. Don't tell that story again. Google it, and you can see how and in what
He was
condition.
the former vice president, governor of New York. He died happy.
He did, with
Even
his
though
pants
wife
on backwards.
was named Happy, but she wasn't there at the time.
She wasn't there. Okay.
No.
I'm just looking at the peacock spider mating dance, which is pretty incredible. But I think you said this, but The peacock jumping spider is roughly the size of a grain of rice, Cy Montgomery. It's incredible.
I know. And when we think that there's so much beauty packed into this world,
it's incredible.
That something the size of a grain of rice.
Oh my gosh.
Is complex and magnificent.
One last thing before we go in terms of lovemaking and relationships, particularly around Valentine's Day in the non-human animal world. We've discussed this with you many a times. There are a ton of same-sex relationships in the animal world, which sort of undercuts all the crap from the anti-LGBTQ pals in terms of the unnatural, I think is the word that they love using.
It's so well documented in the natural
Tell
world.
us a little bit about that.
Aristotle wrote about it 2,300 years ago. And Native people know this because they're in the world. And it just shows us how exuberant and inventive, lovemaking and family making can be. The first documented case of Adelie penguin homosexuality was recorded in, what was the year? It was like 1911. And the report was not published because it was considered to be a depraved thing.
Sure, yeah.
But it's very, very common. And lots of different penguins, to this day, even in American zoos, of the same sex are even raising young together. It's really common in some of the animals that we most revere. It's common in elephants. It's extremely common in dolphins. It's common in bonobos, the pygmy chimpanzee, who will make love with anybody. They'll make love with same sex and everything. They'll make love with their youngsters. It's just, make love, not war. They don't have sex just to procreate. They do it to bond and say, hey, nice day, isn't it? Let's have sex. Okay, that's a great idea.
Okay, I'm looking.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the peacock spider mating dance too, and it does look like that they kill their mate, right?
They may.
How do they kill them?
They bite them with their fangs and inject them with poison and eat them.
Wow.
And they suck their juice.
My God.
All have their skeleton on the outside. These all arachnids have exoskeletons. So what they have to do, and what they do with most of their prey is an invertebrate animal. So you can't eat the crunchy outside.
Right.
You have to liquefy their insides and suck it out.
They are beautiful, though. Aren't they incredible?
Yeah.
And the colors are incredible, and the dance is incredible.
I know, it's so
You have a few
exuberant
hours
and
to
happy.
kill to check out the peacock spider mating dance. It is something to see.
If you got to go, as the old saying
You gotta
goes.
go.
Exactly.
That's right. That's right. So let's talk about dogs. This is a great story.
Can I make a suggestion? Because this one is complicated. Can we take a break?
We take a break.
And
okay.
then do it. This story is fabulous.
We'll get back and talk
Be
about
right back to you, Si.
Dogs do indeed have something to tell the world. That is the headline of the piece, and Si's going to tell us what it means. After this quick pledge break, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
Okay, we have some wonderful listener comments. Those are comments people left who were kind enough to donate to what they could to this enterprise here at GBH. Nancy from East Sandwich says, Jim and Marjorie are the best. That's very nice. But also, Juliette Kayyem for president in 28. I love that one. Jamie from Woonsocket, Rhode Island says, GBH is my most trusted news source, especially in this political climate. Mary from Concord says, I'm a lifelong listener. This service is very valuable to our community, and everybody needs to do what they need to sustain it. So those are just a few of the comments we got, and we're very grateful to people that take the time to donate and take the time to comment, because as I've said a million times, most of our budget, more than 70%, comes from the contributions and the generosity of people who are listening right now who make small contributions. And we take big contributions too if you're loaded and you like to throw us a lot of money, but we depend on those small contributions, and we're very, very grateful to those people who are generous enough to make them. So the number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And it's the last day of the winter, whatever you call it, pledge drive. I can't believe Marjorie did not celebrate the Eton Emergency Crank Radio and the dry bag where you put your stuff in the, thank you, that would not be the dry bag. That's the cranking of the radio.
That's right.
Which means that's where it gets its energy source from. So if power goes out or that sort of thing, it really, by the way, it is really useful and important. You never need batteries. It's an LED flashlight built in. Give your cell phone an emergency charge. It's really one of the best things, I think, best things we make available. $12.50 for the two of them. $12.50 to get both, and it's a monthly, or $150 all at once. The $12.50 would come out of your credit card or a checking account or that sort of thing, and it's more affordable. But as we say constantly, and we're done at least this show in Pledge Drive in 41 minutes, give whatever you can. And if you, I know it's hard. You're going to think it's hard to read these comments, as wonderful as they are. And you notice we don't read them in between pledge drives. But if you feel even one half of is good about what this station provides for you, particularly in difficult times, you'll almost sort of feel like you have an obligation, I hope, to support it in whatever way you can. And if it's small dollars, that's great, as Marjorie said. If it's big dollars, that's great too. But do what you can do to show you care about and value what our colleagues do. You can do it by calling 888-897-9424 or going to gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Braude live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're continuing our conversation with naturalist and author Cy Montgomery.
Simon Montgomery, I love this story about do dogs doesn't tell the world, not just because about the way they communicated, but the idea at the beginning of the story that you can train your dog over the top so your dog becomes kind of afraid to do anything without the okay from its owner. And you've seen that. We've all seen that, I think, with friends of ours that have dogs. Sometimes you can go too far. But anyway, this particular person solved this by these buttons. So tell us what they did with the buttons and their sheepadoodle.
Yeah, this is great. This the sheepadoodle's name was Bunny, and she's very famous now. I remember hearing several years ago. She's got like 9 million TikTok followers and a vocabulary of 105 buttons. But these are buttons that you press with your paw, and it says a word, and you can string different words together. And they were originally created by this woman whose name was Christina Hunger. She was a speech-language pathologist, and she created them for her dog, who was a blue heeler Catahoula pup named Stella. And so what Stella would do would be things like say, bed later, want outside now. And if she said no, then Stella might say, love you, no.
Yeah, love you, no. That's incredible. So they press these with their paws, different color. That's how it works, right?
That's how it works. And they say all kinds of interesting things. There was a pit bull named Tilda, who apparently did not like the sound of her owners playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
And so she would press this button that said sound, sound, sound. And so I think they were thinking of maybe getting headphones. There was another dog named Cash, who was a golden retriever. And she didn't like, and a lot of dogs don't like this, the sound of food sizzling on the stove.
Oh,
and
really?
Yeah. And so she would press the button that said worried, worried. But Bunny, the sheepadoodle that we were just talking about, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that she's really talking about something important that matters, and that she's not just randomly pushing buttons that sound like sentences to us. She would say mad, ouch, stranger, and then she held up her paw, and there in her paw was a foxtail thorn, which was stuck.
Ouch, wow.
Stranger.
So what are we to make? They said in the story that dogs can have the brain of a 2.5-year-old. So what does this tell us about their mental capacities?
Well, to tell you the truth, when people compare adult animals to human children, I always keep in mind that the adult animal is finished and complete, and they have everything they need to go about their adult life. And it's kind of insulting to compare them to someone who isn't done yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Particularly our children are just helpless for the longest time. And think of that compared to, a newly hatched baby chick can go find food and run around. You know, a wildebeest 7 minutes old can be running with the herd. So, you know, it's not quite the same, but they do have a capacity, some do have a great capacity to learn our language. However, I got to say what I find most interesting personally. I mean, I'll tell you why I haven't rushed out and gotten these buttons for my third, who's with us right now. I've been petting him the whole time. He says hello to all of us.
Oh,
sure
hello,
he does.
Thurber.
Especially to you two, who he's met and
Yes, he
stuff.
has.
That's right.
Sung for us.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
The reason I haven't rushed out to get the buttons, even though I think the buttons are really cool and they do tell us stuff, is I already have friends who talk.
Yeah.
And I want to learn from Thurber his language.
I knew this.
And there's very few times when I don't know pretty well what he thinks and what he wants. And there's very few times that he's not aware of what I think and what I want. And when I think of that,
Hold
really,
on. Like what that you want that he's aware of?
oh, of course he wants to go OUT.
Okay.
For a W. I can't even say the rest of the
No, we got
letters.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. And even to see BIRDS when we take care of my friend's chickens. I mean, if I say that, he immediately wants to do that.
Oh.
He's reading my body language. His breeder and all of his siblings are working professional herding dogs, and he would normally never have let us have him as a pet, but he was blind in one eye. His breeder absolutely believed that all of his dogs were psychic because they were so good at reading what you wanted. Now, there are times, like at 3 o'clock in the morning when he jumps up on the bed, I would love it if he could tell me, I'm about to have fire hose diarrhea. And, you know, instead of, oh my gosh, I heard a fox out the window.
Yeah.
So I do sometimes make those mistakes, and I don't know what he's trying to tell me. But most of the time, and you know, the case when Bunny said, you know, stranger paw, ouch.
Yep.
She held up her paw. Just holding up your paw
is a sign.
Would be the sign that you need. But I think it's really cool for those dogs that enjoy doing that kind of thing. Some dogs may not enjoy that kind of thing, you know? And your child might not be a enthusiast at age 4, and some people's children are. Some dogs, I think, will take to this right away and really enjoy it, and for others, it will just be frustrating and annoying.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us have had dogs in our lives, and sometimes if you get upset, if you're upset about something in your life, or you're watching a sad movie, you start crying, the dog gets really upset and wants to come over and cuddle you. But some dogs don't get it. You know, you're over there hysterical on the couch, you know, some tearjerker movie, and the dog just wants you to throw the ball and all that. Is that just a difference in breed, or is it different? What is that about?
Yeah, our Sally, our second border collie before Thurber was like that.
Yeah.
Howard had like this horrible injury to his thumb, and all he wanted to do was lie in bed until dawn so he'd go to the ER. And she wouldn't lie next to him. She just went away. It could be that they feel like, ooh, something bad. I want to get away from it.
Oh, okay.
Or they may think, ooh, something bad. I'll cheer them up. I know a ball would be wonderful at this moment while you've got, you know, some axe stuck in your head. But sometimes people are like that too. They think, you know, your house is on fire. Do you want something to read? You know, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go
Jim.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say how the reporter who wrote this story went to meet Bunny.
Yes.
The genius sheepadoodle. And even though Bunny is really a genius with these things, Bunny did not feel like having a conversation with the reporter.
Really?
And it wasn't that the reporter was mean or that, you know, she smelled like a skunk or anything like that. Bunny just didn't feel like doing it at all at that moment. But later, when Bunny and her person were discussing the visit from the reporter, that was when Bunny went to the buttons and pressed, by stranger friend.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really great.
So, Simon Montgomery, before you go, I've been reluctant to bring this up with you because I was afraid about what your response would be. I am among those who spend much more of their time looking at images of Mudang on social media than I know I should. And I assume everybody knows who Mudang is. This is a pygmy hippopotamus who is in a zoo in Thailand, a couple of hours from Bangkok, who is the cutest animal, maybe, which ever lived. And the reason I was nervous to bring it up with you is because the reason I do look at it, millions of people, is because the animal's so cute. And it's sort of, does that bother you that we, so many of us, feel an attachment to the cute non-human animal, but not so much the one that isn't? You know what I mean?
Well, my hope is that Mudang is like the gateway drug to love all animals.
Do you look at Mudang at all?
Oh, God, yes. She's so cute.
It is unbelievable.
Oh, my gosh. And you know what Mudang means?
No, I don't. What does it mean?
Bouncy pork. Exactly.
Bouncy pork. Oh, they get all these toys online. You can buy the Mudang toys.
And you can buy Mudang there, too, which is bouncy pork. Not the Mudang variety and that sort of thing.
Yes, she has two siblings, and one is called Mutoon, which means braised pork, and Mukrobe, which means crispy pork.
No, I'm telling you, the two things to do when you're feeling unbelievably overwhelmed by the state of the world is read anything that Simon Montgomery has ever written, including the current What the Chicken Knows, or look at Mudang on social media. It is just the most charming, electric kind of little thing I've ever seen in my life. That would be Mudang. Hey, Simon Montgomery, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time.
Happy Valentine's
and
Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too, Cy. Thank you. I'll be
Take
thinking
care,
about
Cy.
those spiders.
I bet you will.
Glorious moments before they get eaten by their partner. We've been speaking with Simon Montgomery. She's a naturalist and author. Her latest book is What the Chicken Knows, but she's got lots of great books. If you look up Simon Montgomery's books, there's something for everybody on your list. Up next, we're going to open the lines and talk about movie theater etiquette. If the movies keep getting longer, why don't the theaters include an intermission? And do you like the idea that they're going to tell you what time the movie actually starts, instead of telling you what time the ads and the previews start before the movie? 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support, so please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
So here's the deal. Only a couple of more pledge breaks for us, and we are done for the winter pledge drive. Marjorie, I cannot believe, has not said today, please give by 2 o'clock, because we get credit, even though I don't think that's true.
I should have said that.
She thinks that's true.
Please give by 2 o'clock.
So on her behalf,
29
I will
minutes
say,
left.
Please give by 2 o'clock. And today, if you pick $12.50 a month, or you donate $12.50 a month, or $150 all at once, you get two things, not one. You get the dry bag combo. Again, I'm not crazy about it. Marjorie loves it, and it does serve a purpose.
It does.
The thing that I love is, can you crank it, please? The Eton emergency crank radio. She's lost it, of course. Excellent cranking. Now, what is the purpose of the cranking? You have no batteries, your power is out, you're in a storm, you're stuck in your car battery dies. This charges this thing. It can also charge your cell phone. It has an LED flashlight built in, which is charged by your cranking.
That's right.
So it's, and by the way, it's fairly small.
With solar power, too.
Solar power, too.
So
if you want that and have $12.50 a month or $150 all at once, you call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. If you don't want it, or you don't have the money for it, give whatever you can, because this is the final day of the winter pledge. And as Marjorie has told you ad nauseum, more than 70% of our financing comes from listeners like you.
And you know what else I should have mentioned about the
What's that?
Eton Crank Radio? It gets the National Weather Service channel, and that is a place where you can get warnings for disastrous weather about to hit your. And so if you're in a place where the electricity's gone out, the power's gone out, or you can't, this will give you that access to information.
Yeah.
In case your cell phone has died or something. It's like a backup thing that I think makes you feel, it should be in your emergency tote bag or whatever you do.
Do you have an emergency tote bag?
I do not. Do you have one?
Yes, I do.
Oh, I should, but I don't.
use the dry bag as my emergency
the dry
tote bag.
Anyway,
I do, yes.
This is the last day, as Jim has said, and I do like to get credit, and I do think we get credit, even though Jim says we don't. But in actuality, the station says that the deadline is 7 p.m. for the Eton Crank Radio and the dry bag, and we are very grateful if you've been hesitating, procrastinating. This is the last day. It'd be great if you are a fan of what you hear here to contribute to keeping us on the air and be able to provide all the great programming we are providing right now. So the number again, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. We got the dry bag and the Eton Crank Radio until 7 o'clock tonight. The emergency crank radio, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Margery Eagan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The Oscars, the Academy Awards, are March 2nd, which is very close now. It's a Sunday night. And generally what people like me do is try to catch up on at least some of the movies they haven't seen that are nominated for the big awards. So we decided we'd talk movies with a particular angle. We're going to talk about some legislation in New England. A bill filed in Connecticut would require disclosure at all movie theaters about the real start time of the movie itself, not just when the millions of minutes of ads and trailers start. Would you appreciate this added transparency? Do you already skip the trailers and show up right as the lights dim, even though you have to guess? Or do you like settling in for 30 minutes of unrelated content before your movie even begins? And while we're at it, speaking of movies and time, movies keep getting longer and longer. For example, The Brutalist, which is nominated for everything. What is it, 3 hours and 30 minutes,
long.
I think.
It's long.
Should theaters start running intermissions in interminably long films? So we have a couple of movie questions for you. Are intermissions a good idea? And would you like a law? I know people don't like new laws. I do. Would you like a law that mandates that movie theaters tell you when the film itself is actually going to start if you want to skip all the ads and all the trailers? Our number is 877-301-8970. Where are you on these two issues?
Well, I thought it would be a great idea to know when the movie was actually starting instead of the previews. But
I love the previews.
They went out to interview these independent small theater owners who said this is going to be, they're barely surviving as it is because people aren't back in the theaters as they were. They said this is really going to hurt them because they won't be able to get the ad rates if they think that people are going to rush in like 2 minutes before the movie starts. So
that's
I hadn't even thought of that. But
how do you feel about the intermission?
Well, if it's really long, like 3.5 hours, I mean, they made a point. Do you have the story? I misplaced it somewhere. Surprise, surprise, surprise. They talked about the app that you can get that tells you.
It's called runp.com.
.com. That's right. It tells you when's a good time to run and go to the bathroom if you're in a 3.5 hour movie. So you won't miss any crucial.
Intermission,
won't miss any crucial scenes. But I'm really for shorter movies, so you're not there more than 2 hours. And then Dune was a really long movie. That was 2.5, or Dune 2, whatever it was, 2.5 hours. This Brutalist thing is really long. That's a little bit much. You know what they need? They need an editor. That's what they need.
Well, they need shorter movies. I agree. But for the long movies, the only problem with the intermission, even though it makes sense to a degree,
is
you know what that means? It's longer than it was without the intermission.
That's right. And it's really crowded in the bathrooms and all that kind of stuff.
So let me explain one more time. I wasn't going to get into it, but since you did, if you're interested in runpe.com, it's exactly what Margery said. What this guy, who's head of it, does with a bit of crowdsourcing is he analyzes every, I think my mic is off. It's on again. It analyzes every movie and the portions of the movie that he or other viewers think is not that important to see. Maybe it goes on too long.
That's right.
Is when he advises you, maybe it is P time. So that's runp.com. You can talk about that too if you want, but we're talking about intermissions and how would you feel about theaters disclosing, either mandated to disclose or not, when the actual movie begins. Heather in Rentham, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hi, long-time listener. Thanks for taking my call.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
I would love transparency for start times. I just went to a movie about a month ago with my 5 kids. And the movie itself didn't start until 40 minutes after the listed time.
Oh, my God.
You know, I never thought
really
about
does
it.
impact you if you're trying that.
For a mother, I never even thought about that with kids.
So they had 40 minutes of previews and
That's
ads?
what she says, yeah.
Wow, that's terrible.
It was, yeah.
So how old are what's the range in your 5 kids?
My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 16.
Well, you're amazing. So do any of them, I mean, I love the trailers. Often they're better than the movie I went to see because it's sort of the best of the best of. Did any of them like it or they want to get to the movie?
Depending on the age and depending on the movie.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Boy, for a mother.
Now you're going out alone. We want more trailers so we can be away from the kids longer.
You're an honest mother there, Heather. Thanks for the call.
One of the things about the previews, sometimes it's just like everything's getting blown up. It's massive destruction and stuff like that.
You know
It's
why that
really
is?
loud.
Because people like that.
They do like that.
They
I
give
know
you
they
what
like
the viewer likes.
But you go to one of these little small independent film places like Coolidge Corner. I go to the Coolidge Corner Theater a lot. You don't get that kind of stuff, so I like it. They bring out these commercials, not commercials, but ads for their snack bar. Let's all go to the movies.
I like that. You don't like
yeah.
that?
It's like out of the 1950s. Mom is there in her shirtwaist
They
dress.
have real butter at Coolidge? They do, don't they?
They do. They have real butter and they have liquor too. They have not hard liquor, but they have wine and they have beer, which is very nice. That theater's been there forever. It's like the West Newton Theater has been there forever. They're just these big old. You must have a couple of those in Cambridge, don't you?
Yeah, we have the place where you always mock and you say you got to wear a
that's
beret
right.
to go to the Kendall Square Theater. I've been to the Kendall Square many a time, and I have to say, most times I'm not wearing a beret, Marjorie, despite what you think. Ezra, you're in Providence.
It's got a real Cambridge feel to it. Let's put it that way.
It does, which is, I'm sure, a compliment.
Yeah.
Ezra in Providence, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you. So,
What's up?
A couple points. I think I would like to know when the movie is starting.
Yeah.
Because while I enjoy the previews, I like to cut it close. You know, generally, and having a fake start time adds to my timing anxiety. But then, secondarily, if I knew when it really started, I'd know when it really ended. And I feel like maybe I could sneak some more movies in there if I wasn't worried about actually having time.
You know, that is a brilliant
Great
idea.
point.
I can't believe we didn't think of that. As important as knowing when the movie starts, if you know when it starts, you know when it ends, if you can do the math, which is sort of important to live your life in. Ezra, that was an excellent and thoughtful call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Maybe we should take a little short break because it's a little hard to hear, and we'll come back after a pledge right here talking about intermissions. And what is the other thing we're talking about? Intermissions and start times.
Start times, and do you want to have a break to go to the bathroom, whether there's an intermission or not, so you don't have to, as one of our texters says, go to the movies in your Depends.
Exactly. We'll be right back.
It's time.
Expression, well, we're rounding the bend.
We're rounding
Meaning
the bend.
It's the last day of the pledge drive. Let me do what I did a couple of hours ago.
What?
Let's just pick today. You had an hour with the mayor of Boston. Whether you live in Boston or not, Boston affects all of our lives. You could call and ask her a question or come down and ask her a question. At 12 o'clock, you had one of the premier national security people in the United States. That would be Juliette Kayyem here with us discussing world affairs, Gaza, Ukraine, etc., and domestic ones as well. Dr. Ashish Jha, who is President Biden's COVID-19 coordinator, now at Brown, talking about all these public health issues that matter to all of us, and then wrapped up with Cy Montgomery, one of the most wonderful human beings on the earth, brilliant naturalist. That's a pretty good one day.
I think so.
And I think it's
We
sort
try.
of emblematic of, again, how we and our coworkers try. And if the trying is working for you and what you hear in the morning and the afternoon and the weekends is doing the same, it's your opportunity to make a contribution, whatever amount you can afford, at 888-897-9424 or at gbhnews.org, and it's really, really fast.
So this is our last day of the pledge. We won't be doing a pledge for quite some time now, and this alleviates the need for commercials, which would be really horrible because they can run very long and they're often boring, and not everybody can record things. Nobody likes us to listen to commercials anymore. I don't know how they make any money on TV, really, because everybody flies through the commercials. But in any case...
It's a really good question.
Yeah, well, I guess you can't record everything.
No, you can't.
But,
it's not that
you
good
know,
question.
they're awful, and we don't have
Awful.
those here, and we have people that mention things like Mass General or Brigham and Women's or something like that. Anyway, that's the deal here. That's what we mentioned. We mentioned people that are funders, right?
Yeah.
That's what we mentioned.
Whatever.
I don't know that they're funders, actually.
I was just going to say,
I don't
you
know
just
why I
made
said
that up out of the blue.
I don't know why I said that.
Okay.
Forget that.
I'll give you one. You meant because they're going to be on the show tomorrow. Christopher Myers and Joanne Chang and Flower and Myers and Chang.
There you go.
Are among the people who support this station.
That's right. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay,
Anyway,
fine.
this is
Thank you very
the
much.
last day of the pledge drive. This is the last 20 minutes for our show. So if you've been hesitating, it would be wonderful and you like what you hear here to help us out. So the number again, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. You have the dry bag and the Eton Crank Radio, and they're both really neat little gifts to have. The dry bag for the summertime,
One of them is, yes.
going out into
You
the
like
beach,
them
you're going to
both.
the boats, and you know, if you have a crisis weather-wise, it is great to have the Eton.
Or the power goes off.
Or the power goes off.
Thank
It's
you.
great to have the Eton
Thank
Crank
you very
Radio.
much.
888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Okay, as I said, the Academy Awards are on March 2nd, which is a couple of weeks away. And if you're like me, and I assume most of you are, you haven't seen virtually any of the movies, so this is your opportunity to catch up. And since movies are on the mind, they're also a nice distraction from the state of the world quite often. We have two questions for you. One, should long movies have intermissions? Did you know, by the way, that Killers of the Flower Moon, was that Martin Scorsese? I think it was.
Yes.
He did not include an intermission. A lot of theaters, without his permission, are shoving in intermissions because the movie's 3 hours and 26 minutes long. So should there be intermissions, number one? And number two, how much would you like it if the theaters were required to publish the start time? That first caller, a mother of five, clearly for moms. It is a huge and positive thing.
Yeah.
How about you? 877-301-8970.
One of our texters says, considering the amount they mark up the price of food and snacks, I'm surprised they don't have an intermission every half hour for every single movie. But let's play a little bit of sound. Is one of our sound pieces says, one of the best parts of trailers of yore, those are the olden days, was hearing the voice of the late Don LaFontaine.
He was famous.
Who had an unforgettable gravelly voice.
did.
So here is a compilation our staff put together of some of Don LaFontaine's highlights, I should say.
Above Gotham looms its greatest hero, Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 2. Space Jam, an Ivan Reitman comedy of epic proportions. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. This time he's Shrek.
That's pretty good.
I love that one.
The late Don LaFontaine.
We got one more that we should
sure.
play.
Go ahead.
This is a compilation of the kind of worlds, quote unquote, that movie trailers can transport us to.
In a world where great risks can bring extraordinary rewards. In a world where laughter was king. In a world without gas. In a world where the sun burns gold. In a world where owning a radio was strictly forbidden.
In a world where Jim and Marjorie work 11 to 2 every day. 877-301-8970. How much would you like to have a voice like that, by the way? Not like that, but like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of these people have wonderful voices. Like
They
the
do?
gentleman we had on that we had him on the radio that does the tea.
Yeah, he does stuff for GBH too.
Yeah, he's got a great voice. Anyway, 877-301-8970. Joanne from Lunenburg, what do you think?
Hi, Joanne. That's Frank Ogletree. Thank you, Jamie, because we're embarrassed.
Frank
Even though we love
Ogletree.
the guy, both of us forgot his
Beautiful.
name. No disrespect,
Beautiful
Frank. We love
voice.
you, but whatever. Okay, Joanne, you're on the show. What's up?
Oh, all right.
That was it? Oh, you have a rotten phone.
Yeah, Joanne, it's
This
a
is
bad
not like an
connection.
anti-Lunenbergian kind of thing, but we got to put you on hold. We'll take one more call. We'll try to get back to you. So run around your house or something and try to get a different spot or something.
Oh,
like that.
here's somebody, a Massachusetts
What?
transplant, who says they've used Run P since it came out.
Really?
Yes, it's great. You can read the recap of what you're missing as you're rushing out to
Oh
the
my
bathroom.
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's especially great when you have little kids, because the little kids are always having to go to the bathroom in the middle of the movies, as every parent knows. Okay, 877-301-8970. Let's try Claire from Arlington. Hi, Claire.
Hello, Claire.
Hey there.
Hi.
So people are always going to be late. So if you tell somebody the movie starts 15 minutes later, then by the time the movie starts, people are going to be coming and interrupting the
genius.
movie. So I
You're
think you should tell them to get there early.
You are right. Actually, that is a very valid real-world point. So you're against telling them what the real time is.
Exactly. They should come, they should sit down, and by the time the movie starts, then you know there'll be no interruptions.
Yeah, and also, is there anything more horrible than when you show up on time for a movie or a play or a concert, and once it starts, you got to stand up and somebody's got to step on your toes to get to their seat? How horrible is that?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
annoying.
well, it's not as horrible to use. Okay, Claire, thank you. We're going to try Joanne in Lunenburg. She didn't think it was as bad as I did, but that's fine. Let's go to Joanne in Lunenburg. We'll try her one more time. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
Like we control the public radio, we should be willing to do commercials to keep our theaters open.
Okay, we lost you. Joanne's point, which we caught a few words of, and we're sorry, is you got to live with the commercials to keep small theaters open. The point you were making before, yeah.
That's exactly what a lot of small independent theaters say. It could force movie theaters to lose a lot of money is what they're afraid of, and they're already struggling to begin with.
Who wrote this note to us? This is the most brilliant thing ever. Jamie said we should have runp.com on our show. So
That's
they're
right.
listening to a 3-hour show. What's the dull segment going to be? When is Jim going to pontificate for like 11 minutes in a row? You go pee and you come back and you miss nothing. Jamie, that is brilliant. Paul and Milton, you literally have 40 seconds. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Love you guys.
Thank you.
I have no problem with the previews or the ads or any of it. I'm kind of ambivalent over the intermission idea. But the problem I have is just with the excruciating volume.
Yes.
That is
of
so
those previews and ads.
Yes.
And I know Marjorie alluded to it already.
Yeah.
It's awful. I mean, it's like hearing loss loud.
It really. Now, by the way,
Yeah,
that
you have
is a
to
wonderful
block
point.
your ears because it's booming and everything's blowing up and the
awful. It's
fires.
awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Paul, we're glad you got through. Thanks so much for the call there.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention, Jim,
Please.
a texter says, this is off topic, but I wanted to tell Jim Browdy I tried his methodology for making hard-boiled eggs.
And?
I wrote down what he said to do, and it worked beautifully.
It does.
The eggs cooked perfectly, and they peeled like a dream. She is forever indebted to you.
I've done it like 5 times.
Jim
Tomorrow, for those who missed it, I will tell you, I got it from Bon Appetit, and it is foolproof. I've been looking for decades.
I tell you, if you weren't going to tune in
Foolproof.
tomorrow, there's a reason
I
to
would.
tune in to hear Jim's peeling the eggs
That's
methods.
probably the time in the show where everybody's going to go to pee, for those
Okay.
who know how to do it.
Okay, thank you very much for tuning in to
Thank
Boston
you.
Public Radio today. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by Chuck Todd. He just left NBC, but he's still a political analyst. Used to be on Meet the Press. You know him. Former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral, MIT economist John Gruber is going to talk about the Elizabeth Warren's Consumer Protection Bureau, which may be getting axed. And the first of a new series we're starting, How Do You Two Know Each Other? I
love this.
We're going to talk with brothers Bill and Tom O'Brien. One's BC's head football coach, the other's a major developer in Boston. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tamzine Vidal. Our engineer is John the Claude Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez Burke, Hannah Eckert, Olivia Corsillo. Is that new? Hannah's, I thought that wasn't
Who
Hannah.
are these people?
That's not Hannah's last name. Is it Hannah's last name? It is?
She may have
Okay.
changed her last name. You
Thanks
never
to
know.
our host, the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lennox Hotel.
Who are these people we're talking about? They have
Yeah.
something to do with us?
Okay. Maybe
Okay.
I'm losing my marbles. Stay tuned to the Culture Show starting immediately after us at 89.7 GBH. Nice
Yeah, what happened to that guy, too? Speaking of whoever these people. Oh, Jared, whatever.
Oh,
Listen
Jared.
to the Culture
Yeah,
Show.
what happened to Jared?
Who knows?
He's gone.
2 o'clock, he's gone. We have people we don't even know working on the show. We'll be back tomorrow. We hope you are, too. Bye.
Bye.
And this is the last day of the GBH Winter Membership Drive, and we're asking you to make your gift of support right now. And this is your last chance to support Jim and Marjorie on BPR. Call 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
Thank you so much. We made last hour's goal. That's fantastic. Guess what? We have a new goal. Right now, we have 14 contributions to get in the next 8 minutes or so. It's your last chance to support Boston Public Radio listening during this membership drive. So how about we get it out on a high note here, get 14 contributions or more in the door, and we will make our goal. You be a part of that right now by going to gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And another special offer that we have the last day of the drive, and it's your only chance to take advantage of this offer while showing your support for Boston Public Radio. It's 2 items, actually, the GBH dry bag and the Eton Emergency Crank Radio. We'd love to send this to you when you become a sustaining member, just $12.50 a month, or a one-time gift of $150. Now, the Eton Emergency Radio is going to keep you connected with AM and FM. The National Weather Service has got a flashlight and even a USB port to charge your cell phone when you're away from your power source or the power is out. Now, let me say about the dry bag, too. That's really cool. It is actually functional because if you're going out in the water in a kayak or someplace, it will keep your things bone dry. They seal right up, but it's also very stylish. You could walk down Newbury Street or any one of your favorite streets with this because it's practical and stylish. Courtesy of your contribution to BPR right now. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
If you've ever talked back to the radio as though Jim and Marjorie were right there in the room with you, well, then it's time to give. And listen, I've been there. I have done that right along with you. You make that possible with your contribution. And that's what we're asking you to do right now in these last few minutes of being able to support Boston Public Radio during this membership drive. You can do that by going online to gbhnews.org or giving at 888-897-9424.
We are poised to end the drive successfully tonight at 7 o'clock, but hitting each one of the hourly goals between now and then really is essential. And right now we're looking for 10 more contributions right now to put the wraps on this hour. So we're poised to have the dollars needed to keep Jim and Marjorie on the air 3 hours a day each weekday. 10 more to go. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
GBH is committed to bringing you the fact-based journalism you expect and, frankly, you deserve. But we can only do that when you support this important public service. Becoming a new member is the best way to do that. It's really easy to give, and your gift now will pay for all the news and programs you want to hear, like Boston Public Radio. It's really that simple. You give, you get back in the programs that you expect to hear on GBH News. Please participate by giving now at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Yeah, it is the last day of the membership drive. Jim and Marge will be here tomorrow. We will not, because we hopefully will have the dollars that we need. We're calling all of the Jim and Marjorie fans who've not made a contribution this drive to step up and support what you value and what it means to you to have them here on the radio. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
It's going really well. We've got 6 contributions left to go in just the next 5 minutes. We're looking for you to participate right now to keep us on track and helping GBH and NPR play that vital role that you look to us for in delivering the trustworthy news that you can rely on. When you give now, you help ensure that the quality journalism you need prevails over fake news. Please make your contribution right now, won't you? We're looking for 6 more people in just the next 5 minutes. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Many people are requesting today's special offer. That's the Eton Emergency Crank Radio along with the GBH News dry bag. We'd love to send those to you with your contribution of $150 or becoming a sustaining member at just $12.50 a month. But this is your last chance to take advantage of this offer while showing your direct support for Jim and Marjorie. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
I want to thank a friend in Wayland who left us a comment saying, I can trust this station. I especially love Jim and Marjorie. Their guests provide so much information. Every single regular is smart, knowledgeable, and informative for me. From John King to Chuck Todd, Reverend Irene Monroe, and Emmett Price, the mayor, the governor, everyone. Sorry, I cannot list them all. I don't know that anybody can list them all. Thank you to you, our friend in Wayland, for making your contribution. You are part of what makes access to all of those experts and people in the know, people who are making decisions on our behalf, possible. Keep up the great work with your contribution right now at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And Stephen from Brimfield says, I hope you stay there. I hope you stay on the air. Well, Stephen, when people like you respond and make sure that we have the dollars needed to provide the home for Jim and Marjorie and put them on the air each weekday, that will happen. But it's no accident. It's because people do step up, people who care. And also I want to thank Sheila in Norton, who says, in this political climate, we need honest and unbiased news coverage more than ever. Thank you for providing this. Well, Sheila, we do try, and we do that with your help. 888-897-9424 or online at gbhnews.org.
This is the last day of this member drive, and it's the last opportunity for you to get this most popular gift